Good morning, all of you, and I welcome everyone, the online listeners and viewers of this second day of the third season of presentations. Today, the semester three students would be presenting their topics on post independence Indian English literature. We will start with Ms. Krupali Belam, who will be presenting on the politics of religious intolerance, Mahesh Dattani's Final Solutions and Global Conflicts in the 21st Century. Then we will have Ms. RUTVI Pal presenting on A Crisis of Representation, Iyengar's Secular Idealism versus Dattani's Communal Realities. Then we'll have Mr. Joy VAGHANI, Intergenerational Dialogue, Can the Young Break the Cycle of Hatred in Mahesh Dattani's Final Solutions. Then we will have Ms. KHUSHI MAKWANA. She will be presenting on the role of memory and history in shaping communal prejudice in final solutions. Then we'll have Mr. SANKET VAVADIYA, a critical view of post-memory conflict and communal violence in Mahesh Dattani's final solutions. Then Ms. BHUMI MAHIDA will be presenting on memory, trauma, and reconciliation, exploring communal conflict in Mahesh Dattani's final solutions. Then Ms. Divya Palidhara will be presenting on the Patriot as a satirical mirror in Nissim Ezekiel and post-independence Indian identity. Then we'll have Ms. KUMKUM Hirani. She will be presenting on cultural identity and colonial shadows in Nissim Ezekiel's The Patriot. Then Ms. Khushi Ravya will be presenting on feminist voices in contemporary Indian poetry, Kamala Das and Meena Kandasamy. Then Mr. Bhargav Makwana will be presenting on Meena Kandasamy, Voices of Caste and Counter-Violence. Ms. Krishna Wala would be presenting on From Homeland to Hostland, Diaspora Identity and Rachna Joshi's Leaving India. Ms. Trupti Haria will be presenting on Leaving India and Dunki, exploring Indian and global migrant experiences. Then Ms. Dhruvika Gohel would be presenting on Post-Colonialism and Midnight's Children, a critique of power and politics. Mr. Parthiv Solanki would be presenting on historiographic metafiction in Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, Narrative, Memory and History. Then Ms. Jyoti Mir would be presenting on Narrating the Nation, Midnight's Children as Postmodern Epic. And finally, we will have Ms. Khushi Goswami. She will be presenting on 19th century narrative techniques in Midnight's Children and A Fine Balance. So we'll begin with Ms. Krupali Belam. The stage is yours.
Intolerance and what parallels can be drawn between the play and contemporary global conflicts such as the Israel-Palestine crisis, the Rohingya persecution in Myanmar, and the communal riots in India. So my hypothesis is that a final solution demonstrates that religious intolerance is not only a local issue, but a universal pattern where memory, fear, and political manipulation transform private prejudice into collective violence. By comparing the play with 21st century conflicts, we can argue that communal hatred is less about religion itself and more about religion used as tool for political and social division. on society. Global conflicts driven by religious intolerance. So, religious identity used to divide communities. Specifically, religious is one of the most emotional part in these riots and all this. So, religious is put in this political areas, and people's belief systems and all these are connected with it. So, riots become more aggressive. So, religious conflict arises from intolerance against others' beliefs or practices. Today, we see wars and tension group between groups such as Muslim and Jews, Hindus and Muslim. Historical grievances kept alive. Past violence and injustice continue to shape community memory, keeping mistrust and fear alive across generations. Political across political actors use religions to mobilize people. In cases like Rohingya crisis in Southeast Asia, violence is influenced not just by religion but also by strategic power, media narrative, and inequality. From modern diplomacy, it says that religious conflict is caused by intolerance against another's religious beliefs or practices. Today, we see such wars between Muslim and Jews, Hindus and Muslims. So, also, Sunata and Transvati note that Southeast Asia violence is not just about religion, but tied to strategic power, journalism, and inequality. So here is a case study of Israel and Palestine war. So religious plus politics. So dispute over lands, rights, and identity. Israelis and Palestinians both consider the same land as their historic home. This overlapping claim leads to constant disagreement and fight over borders, ownership, and who has the right to live where. Jerusalem is a scared to both Jews and Muslims. So Jerusalem contains holy sites like Western Wall for Jews and Aquas mosques for Muslims. Because both groups hold these sites as a central to their faith, sharing or controlling the city becomes extremely difficult. Religious claim intensify conflict. Religion is often used to justify political and military action. Leaders on both sides evoke religious beliefs to strengthen their position, which increase mistrust, provoke violence, and keeps the conflict ongoing. Second one is Myanmar Rohingya crisis. So Muslims targeted by Buddhist majority state. So the Rohingya Muslim minority in Myanmar face discrimination from majority Buddhist population and government authorities. Denied citizenship, described as an outsider. So the Rohingya are not recognized as a citizens and are often labeled as a foreigners, even though many have lived in Myanmar for generations. State violence, burning of religious masses, exodus. The government and military have carried out violent attacks, burned homes, and forced hundred thousands of Rohingya to flee the neighboring countries like Bangladesh, creating one of the world's largest refugee crises. Thus, religious is part of story, but other forces like power, media, and economics matter too. Another one is India, so contemporary communalism. So in 2002, Gujarat riots and 2020 Delhi riots. So the 2002 Gujarat violence and 2020 Northeast Delhi clashes are two major recent instances of a large-scale Hindu-Muslim communal violence in India, producing death, injuries, mass displacement. This event involved organized mobs, targeted attack on neighborhood, and long-term displacement of victims. Studies and reports document heavy losses for Muslim communities and raised question about state response and policing during the riots. Another is religious identity of often politicized. So political actors, electoral politics have frequently mobilized religious identity to build a majorities and a polarized constituency. Scholars show how communal polarization has been shaped by political discourse and party strategies. This politicization creates an us vs them atmosphere that increase the risk of communal outbreaks. Violence often justified as a protecting faith. Perpetrators and sympathizers commonly frame attack as a defense of religious. For example, Godhra Koch burning was used to justify retaliatory violence in Gujarat, giving a moral cover to collective punishment and making violent act appear as a protecting faith of honor. Legal and scholarly investigation documents how such narrative legitimize otherwise criminal violence. Why Dattani's play adds value on it. So hatred begins with us. Dattani shows that communal hatred does not only erupt on the streets. It began in people's heart and homes through memories, fears, and stereotypes passed down over generations. Focus on personal responsibility. The play does not only portray collective violence, it highlights how individuals carry guilt and also have the power of resist intolerance through empathy and dialogue. Characters like Bobby and Aruna demonstrate the possibility of breaking the cycles, understanding the process of intolerance. Instead of simply showing riots as events, Final Solutions reveals how intolerance grows through memory, humor, and mob pressure. This makes the play relevant beyond India as it mirrors a mechanism of global conflict. Critical insights. So, as one critic notes, that Final Solution is a critique of violence, makes a forceful appeal for love and broader understanding. This shows that Dattani's play does not only describe problems but also suggests the human values needed to overcome them. So conclusion is that final solutions show how religious intolerance begins with families and communities. Similar patterns of hate appear in global conflict like Israel-Palestine, Rohingya crisis, and Indian riots. Religion is often misused for politics, keeping old wounds alive. The play urges empathy, dialogue, and shared humanity as the only way to resist intolerance. Here are my references, and thank you. Now, if you have any questions, then you can ask.
Krupali, my question is religion the main cause of conflicts like Israel Pastel or Gujarat riots?
Not always. Religious is not always a main cause because there are a very deeper rule of political power and uh, historical grievance and injustice with people. But religion, because of religion, people's emotion and faith are connected with it. So people become more aggressive towards that riots and all at all.
So, Krupali, my question is what makes religious tolerance in the 21st century especially dangerous?
In 21st century religious intolerance become more because of in this time spreading of fake news from social media and digital tools, spreading of fake news and hated speech and misinformation are the leading part of this dangerous it going to dangerous because of that all.
Hello everyone, myself RUTVI and my today's presentation topic is a crisis of representation, Iyengar's secular idealism versus the Tani's communal realities. Here is my academic information and table of contents. This is how we will moving further. And introduction, the battle of Indians narrative. The quest of define India's post-colonial identity represent one of the modern history most complex cultural project. How to represent a nation of profound diversity, bearing partitions scar while aspiring towards a secular unity. This presentation examined two contrasting visions of circular historical moment. First one is the KRS Iyengar's post-independence project that colonized Indian English literature as celebrating unified composite national culture, and Mahesh Dattani's late centuries dramatic intervention that shift focus on the private space where communal prejudice persists. And my research question is, how does Mahesh Dattani's dramatic works, particularly Final Solution, function as a critique of the secular nationalist ideology embedded in KRS Iyengar's foundational project of Indian English literature historiology? And my hypothesis is this study posits પણ હવે આમાં ઓલું કરી નાખ ભાર્ગવ, હવે આમાં ઓલું સાઇન ઇન કરી નાખ ને. આમાંથી કરી નાખું વાઈફાઈ. હા કેરું મારું મારે કટ 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 કરી ઓલા યુટ્યુબ માં અપલોડ કરવા માટે.
હાલો હાલો.
My research question is, how does Mahesh Dattani My research question is, how does Mahesh Dattani's dramatic works particularly in Final Solution, function as a critique of the secular nationalist ideology embedded in K.R.S. Iyengar's foundational project of Indian English literature historiography. And hypothesis is that Iyengar's literary criticism and poetry constructed a dominant state-aligned ideology of Indian circularism as a unifying, celebratory composite culture. Dattani's theatre, in contrast, staged a powerful crisis of this representation by exposing the violent communal prejudice and personal traumas that fester in the private domestic these national narrative deliberately ignore or suppress. And the ideal Iyengar's literary circularism, architect of national literary conscience, KRS Iyengar fundamentally shape India's post-independence culture identity by establishing Indian literature as the legitimate academic disciple. He envisaged literature as a unifying and enriching force that reflected composite national culture directly aligned with the constitutional principle of circularism. Through his influential role in institutions like Sahitya Akademi, he promoted a unifying nationalist narrative that celebrating unity while consistently overlooking internal feature. His work responds the optimistic national building project of early independence. And the poetic of unity concerns rejection of the decide modern. Iyengar continuously reject modernist poetry disease mind, creating spiritual ethic like Sahitya to resonate poetry as the vehicle of spiritual experiences. His project pursued a greater down, a technological vision of nationally unity that inherently excludes the future realities of communal violence, presenting instead and idealizing forward marching narrative on India's spiritual destiny. And the crisis, Dattani's dramatic intervention, in which Dattani's form subverting the secular stage. Mahesh Dattani revolutionary Indian theatre by moving from a political theatre to doing of theatre politically. His innovative use of fluid chorus, or we can say mob, internalizing communal conflict as psychological mob within, directly challenging circularism, public-private separations through a split stage technique and temporal collision between past and present. Dattani create a cyclical, chaotic structure that firmly reject Iyengar's inner narratives, mirroring instead the under-resolved repetition of communalism in contemporary India. And relocating the conflict, the domestic as a battleground. Dattani's masterfully shift communalism from public square to private homes, where a Muslim boy entering a puja room trigger crisis through character like Aruna, who fears the ritual contaminations, and Hardika, whose partition trauma remains a deep scare on memory. Dattani's reveal how prejudice thrive in domestic space. These expose the final limitation of state circularism, demonstrating that constitutional ideals cannot legislate against private belief. Thus, shuttling Iyengar's myth of composite culture at its very foundation. Generational divides, the inheritance of prejudice. Dattani reveals communalism as an intergenerational inheritance through the Hardika's diary, which traced her transformation from a friendship with Muslim girls to post-partition bigotry. The younger generation circularism remains fragile. Smita's rebellion against her mother's prejudice, highlighting ongoing negotiation rather than solution, while Javed disillusionment after being swayed by cheap sentiments exposed the communal violence as an symptom of deeper social crisis that sets circularism fails to address, embodying what crisis term modernity pathologically by products. And synthesis and conclusion. The evidence presented established a crucial dialectic between Iyengar's and Dattani's project, where Iyengar's spiritually epic envision a greater dawn of national unity. Dattani's intentionally ambiguous final solution acknowledged no is the final solution, rejecting Iyengar's redemptive technology. This contrast proves Dattani's work serve as an essential corrective to Iyengar's state-aligned nationalist narrative and demanding a more honest secularism, but that confront the private prejudice Iyengar's unifying framework renders invincibility. These are the references. Thank you. This is from my side.
So, RUTVI, my question is that is Iyengar's vision of unfilled India through literature completely dead, or do you see it in any modern Indian writer?
And it not dead, but it held in vogue. For example, we can take a modern writer like Arundhati Roy, who she not completely unifying India, but he in his work she mentioned about conflict and other ri- other diverse and acknowledging feature which supports somehow supports Iyengar's view on unifying.
Rutvi, my question is, if the title is ironic and there is no final solution, what is Dattani suggest we actually do? Is the play just pointing out problems?
Dattani, as per my point of view, Dattani suggests that we don't stop at one single big solution, but we should take someone's experience and we also try to solve that problem. Not wait for end the time that we get one solution, but we take a response from other. We have to ask someone that what should I do? This is the problem. What should I do? Though do not stay at one solution. We should take other response as well as.
So, hello everyone. Myself Jay VAGHANI, and today I will demonstrate intergenerational dialogue. Can the young break the cycle of hatred? In Mahesh Dattani's final solution. So here are my academic and presentation details. Table of content. Research question is: can younger generation break the cycle of communal hatred, inheritance from previous generation? In Mahesh Dattani's final solution. Hypothesis: the play suggests that younger characters like Javed and Bobby may have the ability to break the cycle of communal hatred through dialogue and empathy, while older generations remain constrained by memories of partition and inherited prejudices. The domestic setting highlights how personal relationship can reflect broader social tension, and although deep seated biases persist, a small movement of understanding indicates that change through fragile is possible. Overview. Urban Indian setting juxtaposed with memories of a partition focus on one family and two Muslim boys who seek refuge during riots. The drama stage personal memory versus communal rights. So I believe that you have to that this summary the right. So I will skip it. Principal characters and generational locations. Here are three generation. So initially elders, Daksha, along with Ramanik, and they both were mostly focusing on past and past violence. Next is a middle generation, Aruna. Aruna was trapped between traditional values and modern influences. And in younger generations, Smita, Javed, and Bobby, they are questioning inheritance narratives and their possibilities to change this hatred. So each generation offers a unique perspective of memory and prejudices. Elder preserves and transmits historical experience, while younger characters are more open to challenge and redefining these narratives. How hatred is transmitted. Here are four points which are showing that how childhood will growing from through these all points. Dattani says that child will view what we will teach. That child will shows that how they show us or them. That way, and trauma is passed as a narrative, not just a fact. Stories are edited, retold, moralized, becoming injunctions and fear. Public discourse anchors these memories, turning them into communal truth. Dattani's dramatic strategies. First one is a juxtaposition and past and present. So as we know that some characters like Daksha and his son, they both were going continuously past and present. They were doing flashbacks. So through this way, Dattani is trying to say is this history is connected with characters. The handling of religious idols serves as a catalyst or communal tensions, illustrating how mirror provocations can eclipse into widespread violence. Intimate domestic setting. By setting the narrative within a family home, Dattani underscores how personal biases and historical grievance permits private spaces, reflecting broader social issues. Dattani's innovative uses of theoretical techniques such as a flashback and symbolic strategies, effective bridges and past and present, emphasizing the persistence of communal strife. The domestic setting serves as a microcosm for social divisions, illustrating how deeply ingrained prejudices influence personal relationship and, by extension, public conflicts. The young as a possible break of the cycle. So here are three characters who can break who are possibly break this cycle of a hatred. Smita, Bobby, and Javed. So Smita is questioned parental prejudices, like she was against her mother's religiosity, and she embodies liberal skepticism. And Bobby, in a powerful symbolic act, lifts the idol Krishna and shows interfaith respect and tolerance, suggests hope, truly empathy, not division. Javed, a victim of prejudices, exploited into communal violence, ate resistance blind hatred by confronting his past and revealing truth. So from these three characters, Dattani shows that hope lies in dialogue and human gesture, not in politics or ideology. Next one is what prevents the young for breaking the cycle. So entrenched trauma and family memory. This we have seen before, that Daksha was always think about her past and connect with present. Social pressure and fear of ostracism, political manipulation, and instrumentalization of youth. Even when younger characters like Smita, Bobby, and Javed shows a desire to move beyond inheritance divisions, structural constraint, traumas carried by elders, rigid families, traditions, and manipulative politics pull them back into pattern of prejudices. Dattani shows how the burden of memory and community expectations limit the transformative potential of youth. Key sense of intergenerational dialogue. Daksha or Hardika's diary reveals family prejudices shaped by past trauma. Smita versus Aruna. I told before that she is questioning her mother's faith and beliefs uh, and climatic movement. Bobby and Javed's presence forces family to face guilt and biases. This shows both the limits or dialogue and its power. Ending, ambiguity, symbol, and hope. Dattani ends with the symbolically hope gestures, but leaves the resolution ambiguous in practice. Small human gesture imply that reconciliation is possible but not automatic. The play suggests the theater humanize and provokes, but real social changes require sustained dialogue and action beyond the stage. Dattani resists giving a neat definitive ending. His final scenes offer a symbolic hope through action, like Bobby's gesture of respect, but they also underscore that coexistence in fragile, not ju- garneted. Theater opens spaces for empathy and understanding, but without ongoing communal efforts, transformation remains uncertain. Broader implication. Theater is a space to confront communal memories and model dialogue. Practice step, listening, interfaith, connect, education, resistance, divisive politics, change in intermental and fragile, not instead. Final solution shows how theater can spark empathy and dialogue, leaking to ideas like the constant hypothesis and restorative justice. But Dattani also remains us. Theater also cannot heal wounds. Lasting change need sustained efforts in society. Conclusion. Mahesh Dattani's final solution reveals how communal hatred is passed down through generations. Yet, it also highlights the potential for youth to change and break this cycle by juxtaposition past traumas with present dilemmas, and through intimate domestic setting, the play shows the empathy, dialogue, and small human gesture can plant seeds of a change, while enriching prejudices, family's memory, and societal pressure limits immediate transformation. Dattani emphasized that hope exists when younger generations question inherited biases. Ultimately, the play suggests that recognition and coexistence are possible, but require continuously effort, understanding, and courage is both on and off the stage. Here are references. Thank you. Now, if you have any question, then you can ask.
So, Joy, my question is that why does Dattani choose a domestic space instead of public or political setting for the play?
Dattani choose only the family and house because hate is not only outside or in riots. It is started with our home and family, with the stories of our family and body language of our family. So family is like one society where hate is running on, and anger and fear are also there, which is passing through every generation. That's why I choose this.
Can final solution be read as a warning of the future of India?
Yes, it is a warning of future of India. because Dattani says that if people will not question or people will not solve the problems, then it will be harmful to next generation. And also younger generation can break this, but if society will help them. That's Thank you. This was from my side.
Good morning, everyone. My name is MAKWANA. Today, I am dealing with the topic the role of memory and history in the shaping communal prejudice in final solution. My personal information, table of contents. My research question is how do memory and history function as the forces that shape and sustain communal prejudice in the Mahesh Dattani's final solution, and what relevance does this have in understanding contemporary communal conflict in India? My hypothesis: in final solution, Mahesh Dattani demonstrated that the communal prejudice is less a product in immediate conflict and the more the outcome of the inherited memories and the selectively narrated histories. These universal past continue to influence present identities, and the similar patterns can be observed in today's communal tension in India. About the author Mahesh Dattani. Mahesh Dattani is the one of the India's most academic contemporary playwright write in English. First Indian playwright in the English to receive the Sahitya Academy Award in 1998 for his play Final Solution and other plays. His work often explores the social tensions, identity, conflict, gender, sexuality, and the communalism in urban India. Dattani is known for combining realistic situation with symbolic stage devices, making his play both socially relevant and theatrically powerful. We see in the play Final Solution that Dattani is an his intention not just entertainment or income, but he revealed the reality of India. About the drama Final Solution, written in 1993, Final Solution addressed the Hindu and Muslim communal divided in India. The play moves between the partition era memories and the contemporary riots, showing the how unresolved the histories shape the present prejudice structure. Uses the Hardika's diary entries. Play starts with the Hardika who read that their diary, and it shown the memory, the chorus, and the family interactions to dramatize the inherent prejudice. The chorus, as we see in the play, two different type of chorus: the Muslim community and the Hindu community. Central theme: the communal prejudice is not born in the present, but the transmitted through the memory, history, and the intergenerational trauma. Prejudice not made, but it's come with the some traumatical things and relevance. The play mirrors the today's India, where the historical grievance and the selective memories still fuel communal tension. Context: the Final Solution setting and structure. The play spans the multiple generation, the memory of partition and the post partition, and present the communal tensions. Use of the diary entries and the flashback. Hardika, older generation, opens her diary and margining the past and present. We see that the frame frame structure we see in this play that Hardika is Daksha and Hardika. Both voices are different. Somewhere she is innocent and somewhere she is very fear and haunting with her past. The chorus act as the collective voice of ethical communal memory, grievance, and the stirring. We see the two type of chorus, one Hindu chorus and one Muslim chorus. There are Hindu choruses are voice like they blame Muslim chorus, and Muslim chorus asking that why we. Memory as the identity, trauma, and the prejudice. Selective memory and identity. The character selectivity remains the supportion event or to sustain a particular self-image. Trauma and resentment. The Hardika clings to her personal and the familiar memories to preserve the identity, but those memories are also reinforce her prejudice, breaking the myth of innocence. At the crucial moment, Ramanik reveals that the Hardika's husband and father-in-law had burnt a Muslim shop in the past, and her belief in the moral superiority in a unremitted by her own family's history. First, Hardika don't know about it, and at the end, Ramanik reveals that this is shop there, and this time was very late. The two boys go away, and may they don't come in. History, collective memory, and the communalism. History as the contest narrative. The play treats the historical events not as the settled past, but as an active site of the interpretation and the construction. Communal memory and the grievance politics. Memory of past violence and the hatred. Chorus and the collective voice. The chorus voice is generalize the memory of they presented us, they hate us, showing how the communal prejudice is socially reforming. Intergenerational transmission and the interconflict. From generation to generation, Hardika's memory and the anxiety are indirectly transferred to Ramanik and even the Smita, shaping their attitudes. We see in the play that Hardika's memory very traumatic and fearful because she have a prejudice of Muslim communities that they all are not good people, horrible people, and such as that. And it going with the Ramanik also and Aruna also, because she is also very religious. Conflict within the character. Ramanik become aware. Become aware, and he feels guilt for the two boys of his family's past. Smita challenged the inheritance prejudice, memory versus forgetting. The play doesn't analyze the forgetting, but suggests the critical remembering of repetitions as a route forward. Contemporary rivalry, memory, history, and communal prejudice today. Recent communal incidents in India, then communal rituals, lynching, and the polarization over the identity keep historical grievance alive in public discourse. Example that love jihad. We see there are many cases of love jihad that Muslim boy and Hindu girl are come in relations and they marriage, but if something happens to the Hindu girl, that all Hindus are become aggressive, and they start saying that the all Muslims are same, and but also they don't think that also Hindu also do crime and this type of rape and all the things. Selective history in the textbooks and the politics. The public debates about the school history circula, often the center of which events are remembered or the omitted, his shapes the communal narration. The digital memory, social media. Memes, viral videos, and the social media narratives reveal the past communal conflict and the spread them the new audience. The reinforcing stereotypes and the fear. We show in the memes and viral videos and today's film also, Kashmir Files, the films like Kashmir Files, આપણે જોઈ શકીએ છીએ કાશ્મીર ફાઇલ્સમાં કઈ રીતે આપણને મુસ્લિમો પ્રત્યે નફરત આવી જાય તેવા સીન બતાવવામાં આવ્યા છે. ધીસ ઇઝ નોટ કરેક્ટ, બટ વી ડોન્ટ જજ ધેમ બીકોઝ ઓફ ક્રાઇમ. બટ આપણે ક્રાઇમની રીતે જોવા જોઈએ, ના કે કોઈ જાતિ કે જ્ઞાતિને પર્ટિક્યુલર આપણે સ્પેસિફિક જાતિને એવું ન કરવું જોઈએ કે આ જાતિના લોકો આવા જ હોય એમ. Recent scholarship on the prejudice in India, the new look at the prejudice, social identity, and the casteism in India, newer psychological work on the intergroups conflict and the prejudice in India social context, the conceptualizing in Islamophobia in India 2023. We show that some types of naras and a slogan that Hindu khatre mein hai, and this type of the makes us so aggressive that and people don't think that if the prime minister and other of Hindus, that who were કોણ ખતરામાં છે એમ. and પહેલા પણ જ્યારે પ્રાઇમ મિનિસ્ટર એન્ડ એ બધા લોકો મુસ્લિમ હતા ત્યારે તો કોઈ ખતરામાં નહોતું એવું કોઈ વિચારતું નથી. Case study illusion, the recent communal incidents and the map how the memory and history played a role in a flowing prejudice. Example, the mob lying over the allegation and the eating with the attraction of the invoked past injuries, historical reassessment and religious symbols. અત્યારે religious symbol બતાવીને બીજાને ડરાવવામાં આવે છે. Show how the media or local narrative reference past events to justify the violence. Link it to final solution, how the communal memory is used to justify hostility. Key quotes from the final solution which used as a memory. The first one by Hardika. Dear diary, I am sharing my innermost thoughts with you. Nobody else knows what I think or how I feel. Expect now you. This shows the memory of Hardika, and that time she was very innocent and younger, and she doesn't know about all the religious thing and this kind of. Second, the minor incidents challenge all that we all watch. We vibed and the spot. He vibed and the gate. Bobby's memory of the humanization that turns Chavin's outcome. An analytic framework and the theoretical lenses. Memory studies, trauma theory, how the memory is selective, reconstructive, and politically mediated. Social identity theory, and group psychology, how the group identity draws on the remembered past in the group versus outgrown narratives. Collective memory theory, the Marxist Halvards, the Paul Canton, or the John's Cities of Memory framework. Post-colonial and subaltern theory, how the dominant groups shape with the histories are the remembered or the suppressed. Conclusion, memory and history in the final solution are not passive backdrops but the active agents shaping the identity, fear, trauma, and the prejudice. Dattani shows how communal prejudice is sustained through the inheritance narrative and the selective remembers. The contemporary world still reveals how the historical memory and the mobilized in the communal conflict, making the Dattani's play strikingly relevant today. The path forward lies in the critical interpretations of memory rather than the ensure on subpressions. Here are my references. And thank you. If you have any question, then feel free to ask.
My question is, how does Dattani's use space and setting in final solution to reflect memory and communal tension?
Dattani symbolized the home as a setting of the play. The door is the boundary of the two different communities, and the closing and opening door is show the inclusion and exclusion, and the memory is just not a word but is embedded with uh, prejudice and the mental trauma of all the plays. Next.
My question is, what role does gender play in connecting memory, history, and communal prejudices in the play?
The two female character like Hardika and Smita represent as a memory that Hardika preserved her haunting memories and fear for Muslim communities, and while the Smita is liberal, she represent as a modern woman of this play, and tried to argue with her mother that how can she expect her that proud of something which uh, stifle things, and this is from my side. Thank you.
Hello everyone, myself is SANKET and today I'm going to presentation on the topic a critical view of past memory conflict and communal violence in the Mahesh Dattani's final solution. This is my academic information. Table of content we will discuss in the presentation. Let us start with the research question. Uh, my research question is how does Mahesh Dattani's final solution interrogate the possibility of coexistence in a society fractured by communal memory and inherited prejudice? And my hypothesis is the play exposed the destructive nature of a stereotype, showing how suspicious and labeling prevent genuine dialogues between communities. Uh, about Mahesh Dattani. Mahesh Dattani was born in 1985 and he was a celebrated Indian playwright known for tackling social issues often ignored by society. And his work addressed radical themes like homosexuality, HIV, disability, gender discrimination, and child abuse. And he was also used the theater as a medium to represent marginalized voice to those who lack societal respect. And his plays are categorized into three types: stage plays, radio plays, and screenplays. And he was the first Indian playwright in the English to win the Sahitya Academy Awards. And his notable works include Where There Is a Will, another is Dance Like a Man, Tara, Bravery Fought the Queen, and Final Solution. Introduction of the play. The play Final Solution is written by Mahesh Dattani in 1993, and it was written in English and set deeply in the Indian social cultural context. And these are main characters in this play: Hardika or Daksha, Aruna, two Muslim character Bobby Javed, Ramanik Gandhi, Smita, etc. And it explored the communal tension between Hindu, Muslim, and prejudice and stereotypes in this historical context. So when we see the historical context of this play, so we see the one important thing happened in the India. It was in the 1992. That time was this play was written, and it is the demolition crisis of Babri Masjid, and we can also see in this play. And it reflects the communal rights and unrest across India in the early 90s. That was the time was Hindu and Muslim conflict revolving in India. So we can also see in this play. And one another thing is it was the inspired by the 1985 Ahmedabad Rath Yatra riots in Gujarat, and also it is reflected in this play. And it was, and another thing is echoes the post partition trauma of 1947 still hunting families. And Dattani uses as a social critique of communal violence. So this of the historical context of this play. uh, Past memories in the characters of final solution. These are three main character we can see in the how the character's past memory killed his present through his past memory. First character Hardika. In the character of Hardika, we can see in the how her past memories are expressed through her diary entries, which reveals the trauma of partition and childhood. And when we see the character of Hardika, uh, he written her diary through her when he's when her child. And after 40 years back, she opened her diary again. And she reveals her past experience, what happened in her past. And another character is Ramanik Gandhi. And in the character of Gandhi, we can see in the in the present time he felt guilt because of his father's unjust deed. And his father burns Jarin's father's shop to buy at half value. So it is the unjust deed of done by his father. So now he feel guilt. And it is also show the past memory of the character in. And another character is Javed. Javed also is traumatized through her past memory, because he was experienced in his childhood when accidentally he touched his neighbors, Hindu neighbors later. That time he was treated very dirtily. And he was treated as impure. And a mirror to marginalized voice and social tension. So in this play, we can see the Dattani's plays also a social cultural criticism, not mere narratives. The family households become a microscope to India, where a broader conflict and conflict are reflected in this play. And another thing is Dattani's uses of the family unit as a microscope to border social conflicts and challenging patriarchal norms like dominance, violence, and female subjugation in Dattani's play. The conflict between individual liberty and rigid cultural expectation in the character of final solution. So there are the constant tension between the individual liberty and the rigid cultural norms. We can see in this conflict of Hindu and Muslim in the final solution. The play exposed the communal hatred between Hindu and Muslim in India. We can see in the various character in this play. And the Hindu and Muslim mobs voice accusation against each other, symbolizing how stereotype fears define Hindu and Muslim relationship. And another is Rath Yatra violence. Hindu chariots are stoned and idols broken, reflecting the deep communal hostility between Hindus and Muslims. And the pujaris murder, the killing of a Hindu priest, intensified suspicious and blame placed on Muslim. So these are the conflict we can see in this play final solution. Communal violence. So when we see the communal violence, first we see the some historical background of a Hindu-Muslim tension. Of course, rooted in a centuries of invention, cultural and religious difference. And British divide the rules. Policy depends on communal divisions and partition of 1947, mass migration rights and mistrust. So the partition of in 1947, we can see the that time was a Hindu and Muslim conflict revolving in India. We can see and major communal violence incidents. And in Ayodhya demolition 1992, the Babri Masjid was demolished, sparkling a nationwide riots and leaving over 100 people, did mostly Muslim. So we can also see the communal violence. And another is Godhra and Gujarat riots 2002. A train was set on the fire in Godhra, killing 58 pilgrims. Rationally and violence followed, killing 600 plus Muslim and exploiting state failures. Communal violence in a final solution. The play reflects the Hindu-Muslim mistrust in the post-independence India. Uh, in the post-independence India, we see the after the partition, we see the lots of conflict, religious in the Hindu and Muslim, and in this play also. The mob violence symbolize the collective hatred and blind aggression. So Hindu mob and Muslim mob also symbolize as a hatred on each other, Hindu and Muslim. And the Rath Yatra clashes shows the eruption of communal angers. And another is Bobby and Javed, Muslims seek to refuge but are treated with suspicious by Hindu family. These are contemporary examples. Uh, First is Hindu nationalist organization. The groups such as RSS and VHP reinforce rigid Hindu identity, often framing Muslim as adversaries. And another is Islamic organization. Certain Muslim groups state a distinction Islamic identity, feeling suspicions among Hindus that Muslim shows greater loyalty to Pakistan and other Muslim nationalists. And another is expanding influence. This organization shaped public opinion through religious school, cultural programs, media narratives, and community events, which depends mistrupt and obstruct peaceful coexistence. These are the one another contemporary examples. In a recent festival, Navratri, we can see the how the Garba rose in MP Muslim clerics urges youth to avoid Garba amidst rising call for on non-Hindus. So it is also showing the how Hindu and Muslim conflict still alive. Conclusion. So in a conclusion, we can see Dattani's final solution highlights the how past memories, stereotype, and inherited prejudice continue to shape Hindu and Muslim mistrust in India. By portraying the family as a microscope of society, the play reflects the deep-rooted tension that erupt into communal conflict. Yet, amidst violence and suspicious, Dattani also offers glimpse of recognition through empathy and dialogue, suggesting that acceptance and understanding are the only path towards peaceful coexistence. Uh, these are my references. Thank you. Now, you have any question, you can ask.
So, Sanket, how does the final solution portray the stereotypes and the prejudices associated with religion and the community's identities?
Okay, so when we see the play final solution, we found uh, the play exposed the how Hindu and Muslim stereotype each other, and a Hindu mob accuse a Muslim of breaking idols, making a priest, while Muslim are depicted as a constantly hated with suspicious, as labeled as a outsider, as a impure. So these are stereotype we can see in the stereotype. Next.
So, Sanket, my question is, in what way does final solution critique patriarchal values?
Okay, so in the final solution, we can see in the patriarchal value by using family as a microscope of a society. In the women's like Hardika and Smita, both characters does not get as much as freedom, but she is living in a patriarchal society, and this reflecting the female subjugation. The play highlights the tension between individual liberty, rigidness of societal expectation. These are of patriarchal values we can see in this play. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Today's my topic is memory trauma and reconciliation, exploring communal conflict in Mahesh Dattani's final solution. There is academic information, table of content, and let's begin with the introduction. Very briefly, Mahesh Dattani, first Indian English playwright to win Sahitya Academic Award 1998 and explore gender, class, sexuality, communalism in urban middle class settings. Final solutions set against partition, trauma, and contemporary riots. Focuses on a Hindu family plus Muslim outsiders. Themes: communal prejudice, memory, reconciliation, and a significance landmark in Indian English theatre, confront communal disharmony directly, mixes realism with symbolic devices. Research question is: how does Mahesh Dattani's final solution represent the impact of communal memory and intergenerational trauma on individual identities, and in what ways does it envision reconciliation and communal harmony? Hypothesis is Mahesh Dattani's final solutions demonstrate that communal memory and intergenerational trauma significantly shape present attitudes and identities, but through dialogues, empathy, and reflective engagement, the play suggests that reconciliation and communal harmony are possible. So, first is communal memory, and very first is what is the definition of communal memory? So, shared remembrance of historical traumas, for example, partition, riots, shaping collective identity and present attitudes. In literature's link past violence with current conflicts. So, in the Dattani's portrayal, uses Daksha and Hardika's diary as a narrative device, and bridges partition 1947 with contemporary riots, shows how communal prejudice is sustained across generations through memory and storytelling. Memory function as both a burden and a mirror. And this is the generational conflict, Daksha versus Smita. So Daksha and Hardika, like older generation, scared by partition, carries mistrust of Muslims, while the Smita, younger generation, challenges inherited prejudice, represents hope for reconciliation. Conflict illustrates how memory is constant between generations. Then intergenerational trauma. So how historical violence impacts present identities in final solution. So Dattani stages partition trauma as a living presence in the household. Older generation like a Daksha and Hardika carries deep scares of partition, marked by betrayal, violence, and suspicions of Muslims. And her identity is defined by memory of laws and prejudice, which influences her daughter Aruna's overview. Then there is the younger generation, like a Smita, resist inherited trauma. So Smita's identity is shaped by her exposed to both her mother's prejudice and her friendship with Muslim peers. So we know that Smita have two Muslim friends, Javed and Bobby. She concedes inherited hatred, showing how new generation can reinterpret trauma and seek reconciliation. Then reconciliation and hope. So first is instances for forgiveness and dialogue. So Smita and Javed and Bobby interactions, they engage in open conversation despite communal tension, highlighting empathy over prejudice. So Smita is coming from the younger generation, like Smita, Javed, and Bobby. They have no any kind of fear and trauma and this. But Aruna's willingness to shelter Muslim friends represent a practical act of forgiveness and solidarity, challenging inherited biases. This Aruna have some kind of fear and bias or prejudice, we can say, with the Muslim friends. That is how she not give the shelter to Muslim friends. Family reflections on partition through Daksha's diary prompts characters to confront past traumas, allowing them to question prejudice rather than blindly follow them. Then Dattani's vision for communal harmony. So Dattani's does not portray communal harmony as a naive idealism. It is earned through moral courage, dialogue, and ethical reflection. The play highlights that historical trauma cannot be erased, but it can be mediated through understanding. Character who confront their biases. Example, like a Smita, paved the way for reconciliation. The narrative emphasizes that younger generation have the potential to break cycle of haters we can find in the play, like a younger generation, like the Smita and Javed and Bobby. So communal harmony is shown as a dynamic, relational, and ongoing, not a static achievement. Then relevance for contemporary society. So dialogue and empathy are crucial for conflict resolution, and understanding historical memory allows societies to address intergenerational trauma. Younger generations can challenge inherited prejudice and promote social cohesion. Dattani's work encourages active engagement with history and memory as a pathway to reconciliation rather than avoidance. Then innovative stage techniques and final solutions. So dialogue is realistic and layered wise, reveal intergenerational conflict and communal prejudice, externalize internal struggle and engage with audience empathy. And then flashback, we know that Daksha Hardika's diary enact partition trauma and connecting past and present, helps the audience understand how historical violence shapes identities. And then overlapping timelines, past and present events juxtaposed to show uh, uh, persistent trauma, highlight influence of memory across generation. And then we have realism. Domestic middle class setting portrays everyday communal tensions, combines realism with symbolic devices for social impact. And significance, techniques emphasize memory, trauma, and reconciliation, making the audience reflect morally and socially. We can find in the play like how choruses also play a crucial role in the play. So now I conclude my presentation here. So Mahesh Dattani's final solution demonstrate how communal memory and intergenerational trauma shapes individual and collective identities by using innovative stage techniques and play links past and present conflicts while exposing the persistence of prejudice. At the same time, it emphasized the power of dialogue, empathy, and reconciliation in overcoming divisions. Its themes remain deeply relevant in contemporary society as well, highlighting theater's role as a space for remembering, healing, and envisioning communal harmony. So these are the references, and thank you so much. If you have any question, then feel free to ask.
So, Bhumi, my question is, how are ordinary people affected by communal tensions?
Ordinary people affected by communal tension, because they are not directly involved in politics, but they have the communal experience of a fear and mistrust and pressure to take a side of this communal atmosphere. And we can take the example of like Ramanik and Hardika as well, that how they both are grappling with their own biases and internal conflict in the play.
My question is, why is final solution relevant to contemporary society?
Final solution relevant in contemporary society because in the final solution we can find the religious conflict and how the discrimination shows by the time. So we can relevant with because the religious conflict and the discrimination still exists in our society, like many of the caste like a Muslim and many other caste have their own areas and in society. And another is we have to we are not had to past. It's make maybe it's make the problematic, but we have to learn from the past to learn to we can have to learn from the past. It makes people to live in peace. So yes, a final solution is still relevant in contemporary society. That is from my side. Thank you so much.
So, hello everyone. I am Divya Paledhara, and today is on paper number 202. My presentation topic is the Patriot as a satirical mirror, Nissim Ezekiel and post-independence Indian identity. So, let's start. So, here is my academic informations. This is table of content which we will discuss in detail. And my research question is, how does Nissim Ezekiel's The Patriot employs a linguistic hybridity and satirical voice to critique post-independence Indian identity? In what ways does the poem reflect the contradictions of nation buildings in Nehruvian India? And my hypothesis is, Ezekiel's The Patriot demonstrate that post-independence Indian identity is marked by contradiction between nationalist rhetoric and lived social realities. Through broken Indian English and satirical self-contradiction, the poem both parodies superficial patriotism and affirms the necessity of rational self-criticism in shaping a modern Indian consciousness. So, introduction. Nissim Ezekiel, as we know, born on 1924 and died on 2004. He often called as the father of modern Indian English poetry, is a pioneer in shaping post-independence Indian literary identity. His poem, The Patriot, published on 1977, is a satirical dramatic monologue that critiques superficial nationalism and exposes the contradictions of post-independence Indian society. The poem Patriot reflects the identity crisis, linguistic hybridity, and false patriotism prevalent in the era. Ezekiel uses Indian English distortion and comic irony to mirror the socio-political reality, highlighting how ordinary Indians negotiate between tradition, modernity, and colonial legacies. So here, historical and literary context. After India gained independence in 1947, the nation experienced a mixed hope, nationalism, and confusion. While the Nehruvian era promised progress and unity, issue like corruption and bureaucratic inefficiency persisted, giving writers rich material to explore the contradiction of a new India. Indian English poetry of this time sought a distinct literary identity, moving beyond colonial influence. Poets like Nissim Ezekiel used irony and satire to reflect social realities, question nationalism, and explore individual identity, making English as a tool for post-colonial expression. And here, key point like a nationalism versus reality, the poem captures the tension between the rhetoric of patriotism and actual societal contradiction in post-independence India. Then literary assertion, Indian English poetry sought to define itself using English to articulate Indian socio-political concern. Modernist irony, Ezekiel employs irony to critique a superficial patriotism and moral pretension. Then post-colonial satire, language and comic elements reveals cultural hybridity, linguistic conflicts, and identity crisis. So here, the Patriot structure and voice. Structure of the poem: The Patriot is a dramatic monologue, is broken Indian English, reflecting the speaker's linguistic hybridity and social background. Its fragmented conversational flow allows Ezekiel to mix humor with social critique, highlighting the speaker's contradiction and shallow patriotism. Dramatic monologue emphasizes a single voice. Indian English reflects post-colonial identity. Fragmented structure mirrors contradictory thoughts, and comic timing enhances satire. And voices like the speaker is a common Indian citizen, proud but superficial in patriotism. Ezekiel uses this voice to critique religion, politics, Gandhism, and East-West tensions. The tone is comic yet critical, making readers reflect on societal contradictions. Ordinary middle class Indian perspective. Exaggerated patriotism shows superficially themes like religion, politics, Gandhism, East versus West, etc. Comic and critical tone. So here, the Patriot and its critic, the Patriot, the poem shows how the Patriot, the poem shows the how Nissim Ezekiel is a criticized on national, criticized on nationalism. Here the thought, quote of like, philosophy is not for me but for you all. It represent like how patriotism is reflect on our ideal and virtues. Like then shallow patriotism is about people are believe on dogma like nationalism and all those things, like says all those says like I loving my India and my India. They believe on a nation as a shallow patriotism. Then post-colonial critic, here Nissim Ezekiel demonstrate how the post-colonialism is demonstrating in this poem. Then here thematic concerns, identity and nationalism, false patriotism, as we also see, empty slogans and all those things. Then cultural conflict, east versus west. Indians people want to become more modernist and like everyday's life become Western influence and copied Western style. But also being in a traditional values. So religious tolerance versus prejudice and nationhood as a performance. Some peoples in power and nationalism, they all are uses as a misuse, like giving speeches and all those things. But in reality, they act like some misuse of nationalism. Then here, post-independence Indian identity, rhetoric of nationalism versus the reality of patriotism. In the Patriot, Ezekiel parodies the way nationalism often becomes a set of empty slogans rather than lived practice. The speaker loudly proclaims his love for India, but his broken English and contradictory statements reveal superficial understanding. This reflects post-independence India, where leaders and citizens alike celebrated freedom rhetorically, while corruption, communal tension, and inequality persisted. Through satire, Ezekiel shows that being patriotic is not about blind pride or slogans, but about confronting uncomfortable truths. And fractured identity of the common Indian. The speaker, with his hybrid English, mirrors the confusion of an ordinary middle class Indian in post-colonial times, torn between Western ideals and Indian tradition. His pride in India is exaggerated, but his worldview is shallow, symbolizing the fractured, imitative identity of a nation still finding its voice. Ezekiel's use of a comic tone ensure that while we laugh at the speaker, we also recognize our own complexity in such contradiction. The poem, therefore, is not only satire but also a call for self-criticism and rational progress in shaping Indian identity after independence, mean 1947. So, in conclusion, Nissim Ezekiel's The Patriot stands as a sharp satirical mirror of post-independence India, exposing the gap between the rhetoric of nationalism and the lived reality of ordinary citizens. Through the voice of common Indian speaking broken English, Ezekiel highlight linguistic hybridity, shallow patriotism, and fractured identity, urging readers to laugh yet reflect critically. The poem ultimately suggests that true patriotism lies not in empty slogans or exaggerated pride, but in honest self-criticism, rational progress, and the courage to confront social and political contradictions. This is my references. And thank you. Do you have any questions? Then feel free to ask.
So, Divya, my question is, what contradiction of Indian identity does Ezekiel show in the Patriot?
Yes, the contradiction poem shows Indians people are want to become modern, but also in a religious and traditions. The speaker mixing the religion, politics, and also Gandhi's idea. And also Gandhi's idea. So this reflect how patriotic is satire and a contradiction of this poem.
Okay, my question is, how does Nissim Ezekiel employ satire in the portrait to critique post-independence patriotism?
Ezekiel was deliberately create a speaker who misuse the as the nationalism and exaggerated claims, how contradictory conflict like religion, politics, and all Gandhian and east versus west, all those things. So here in this poem, he criticized believe on ideal thoughts, not blindly follow on all national thoughts and all those things. So this is from my side. Thank you.
Okay. So hello everyone. In today's presentation, I'm going to discuss about the cultural identity and the colonial shadows in Nissim Ezekiel's The Patriot. Here are the academic information, table of content, and my research question was that how does Nissim Ezekiel explore the conflict between authentic Indian culture, identity, and colonial influence in the poetry, particularly through the satire, humor, and the use of English language? Hypothesis like Nissim Ezekiel's poetry reflects the intricate tensions between Indian tradition, culture, identity, and the residual influence of the colonialism. By employing satire, humor, and Indian English, his works, especially The Patriot, criticized the superficial nationalism, urban alienation, and social hypocrisy in post-independence in India. Ezekiel exposed how individual and society often adopt foreign ideas mechanically, highlighting ethical contradiction and cultural mimicry at the same time. His modernist style and the ethical reflection assert a distinctive post-colonial literary voice, demonstrating how Indian identity negotiates the pressure of modernity and colonial legacies. Here the introduction, like Nissim Ezekiel was, we all know that he is often called as the father of the modern Indian English poetry. He explored the complexity of the post-independence Indian society in his poem. Also, his poem examines the tension between authentic Indian culture identity and the influence of colonial values through the satire, irony, and linguistic innovation. Ezekiel also criticized the superficial expression of the patriotism. Also, the patriotism reflects the struggle of the defined true Indian identity, highlighting how colonial shadows continue to influence cultural and political life in modern India. Here are the information about the Nissim Ezekiel. I'm not going the thoroughly, but mention some important points. Like he was born in 1924 and died in 2004. He was influenced by the T.S. Eliot and W.B. Yeats. Yeah. So here are the cultural identity, like Ezekiel's works reflect the struggle of authentic Indian culture identity in the post-colonial era. In the Patriot, he criticized the citizens who adopt shallow, performative patriotism and imitate foreign idols rather than engaging with their culture heritage. So basically, Nissim Ezekiel was that saying that, in the poem Patriot, that we have to follow our own culture, our own thought, but he was criticized that people who blindly follow the colonial thoughts, or by using irony and satire, Ezekiel portrayed the tension between the indigenous ethical and colonial influence, emphasizing the challenging the maintaining culture authenticity while negotiate with modernity. His poetry exemplify the effort of reclaim Indian identity in language, thought, and civil lives. In a colonial shadow, in decades after independence, Ezekiel highlight the lingering influence of colonialism on social behavior. So here in his poetry also he discussed about that when after the independence we still follow that colonial behavior or their culture. Some people are blindly follow them, but he says that after the independence we have to create, like we have to follow our own culture, our own idea, but instead of blindly following others. Also that throughout the satire he exposed how colonial mimicry affects morality, patriotism, and social hierarchy. The poem reflects this subtle ways British colonial structure continue to shape Indian social consciousness, like urban alienation. Modern India, cities in Ezekiel's poetry are portrayed as alienating, mechanical, and morally oppression spaces. In the Patriot, urban life encourages superficial patriotism and focus on the appearance rather than ethical commitment. So, in the also Nissim Ezekiel make a point that in the rural life people still follow their rules. Like Ezekiel uses imaginary of a chaotic, barbaric citizen with slums and moral indifference to emphasize the disconnection of the individual from authentic culture and the civil life. Urban alienation in these both social and ethical critique. So satire and the humor, Ezekiel's satire and the humor are central to for social critique. He exaggerates tribal domestic gesture, bureaucratic routines, and the patriotic cliches to expose ethical vacuity. In the Patriot, every small action, such as lending a safety pin, becoming a comic device, is highlighting hypocrisy. Humor is not just merely entertainment, it reflects social contradiction. Critic colonial hangovers that encourages the moral reflection. Here in the this article by the Dvideti, that she also mentioned that she didn't know beginners in India smile only at white foreigners. Like Indian English as a medium, like Iyengar's issue of Indian English is both expressive and satirical, reflecting the post-colonial hybridity. Deviation from standard English to creating comic effect of highlighting social pretension while legitimizing Indian English as a literary medium. In the Patriot, construction reveal performing patriotism and hollow mimicry of colonial ideas, demonstrating language's role in shaping culture, identity, and critique. Humanism and the ethical reflection, like beyond satire, Ezekiel poetry, emphasizing humanism, more responsibility and reflection on ordinary life. Like in the Patriot, he criticized the hollow nation, while he is strengthening ethical and awareness and personal integrity. Also, in Dulai's article, he used one quote like "Oh man is a simple man," which is also connect with the Nissim Ezegil's work. A critic of a social institution like Ezekiel's critic interest social structures such as the caste, family, and religion, which often maintain conformity and suppress ethical reasoning. Like in the patriotism, these institutions shape mechanical patriotism gesture, revealing social rigidity and moral stagnation. By satirizing this structure, Ezekiel underscored the need for independent thought and ethical self-awareness in post-colonial India. Post-colonial nationalism, like Ezekiel advocates reflective and ethically grounded nationalism, like constructing with stick over performative patriotism. In the patriot, citizens mechanically display the national identity without moral depth, exposing a disconnect between the appearance and the ethical substance. His work encourage self-aware, critical, and cultural authentic post-colonial nationalism. Here, the conclusion, like Nizam blend modernity style, satire, ethical reflection, and post-colonial consciousness in his work. The Patriot illustrate like a hollow and performative patriotism, comic religion, and the social pretense like a holy fools, like urban and ethical critique of post-colonial India. His poetry reveals the complexity of the cultural identity in the shadow of colonial influence, like demonstrating that literature is a power tool for social critique, reflection, and the ethical awareness. So here are the references. Thank you. If you have any question, then ask freely.
So, Kumkum, my question is how effective is satire in making readers question societal and cultural norms in the Patriot?
So, Kumku, my question is, does Ezekiel suggest that true Indian identity can exist independently of colonial influence?
So, hello everyone, myself KHUSHI and my today's topic is feminist voices in contemporary Indian poetry, uh, Kamala Das and Meena Kandasamy. These are my personal information, table of contents. Research question is how do Kamala Das and Meena Kandasamy articulate a feminist perspective in their poetry, and in what ways do they challenge patriarchal, caste-based and social structures in contemporary Indian society? And hypothesis is Kamala Das and Meena Kandasamy use poetry as a medium to confront gender oppression, patriarchal norms, and societal marginalization. And their works reveal personal and collective struggles while advocating for women's agency, bodily autonomy, and social injustice, and demonstrating that feminist poetry can be both revolutionary and transformative. Introduction. A feminist poetry in India has emerged as a powerful form of resistance against patriarchy and social hierarchies. Kamala Das, writing in the late 20th century, and explored women's desires, emotional conflicts, and struggles for personal freedom, often challenging social norms around female identity and sexuality. And Meena Kandasamy, contemporary Dalit poet and activist, expands this discourse by addressing the interaction of caste, gender, and systematic oppression, and highlighting the psychological and social trauma faced by marginalized women. In comparing their works, demonstrates the diversity of feminist expression in Indian poetry, and showing how personal narratives are deeply intertwined with broader and socio-political realities. So, English poetry is a definition of Indian English poetry is a poetry written in English by Indian authors, reflecting in Indian experience and culture and identity, and bridges Indian themes with the English languages and creating a unique literary voice. Its evolution is from colonial period. Early Indian poets wrote in English, influenced by British literary traditions, and in post-independence, is a focus is shifted to expressing national identity, social issues, and cultural heritage. In contemporary era, it explores gender, caste, personal freedom, and social justice, blending personal and political themes. And its characteristic is combines personal experience with broader social commentary, and reflects India's linguistic, cultural, and societal diversity, and engages with modern issues while maintaining traditional poetic elements. Feminist voice in literature. Feminist literature highlights women's experience and challenges patriarchal norms, and is significant challenges gender inequality, and questions social hierarchies and stereotypes and oppressions. And its visibility for a woman brings women's voice and stories into a literary space and historical dominated by men. And its empowerment and resistance is provides a platform to critique your society and inspire change. And intersectional insight is explore overlaps of gender, caste, class, and culture, giving a broader understanding of oppression. And its impact is encourages readers to rethinking social norms and value women's perspectives, and influence both literatures and social consciousness, shaping modern Indian thought. Kamala Das, born in 1934 in Kerala, India, and prominent Indian English poet and autobiographer, known for bold confliction poetry and exploring female identity, sexuality, and emotions. Her feminist perspective is personal feminism is focuses on women's inner lives, desire, and struggles within patriarchy, and challenges societal norms regarding marriages, love, and female sexuality. Explore themes like loneliness, identity, and freedom through autobiographical and poetic expression. Her keywords I taken is an introduction poem and my story. An introduction is a poem published in summer in Calcutta, which published in 1965. These consider Kamala Das' signature confliction poem, blending autobiography with social critique, and is explores theme of identity, womanhood, language, and rebellion. In this poem, is a feminist dimensions is in assertion of identity is declares I am what I am, a radical self affirmation to female individuality, and language and freedom is defend her right to write in English, resisting linguistic and patriarchy, and gender role is rejects conventional expectation of being a submissive wife and mother, and sexual autonomy is, speaks candidly about desire, passion, and female sexuality, and resistance to patriarchy is challenges male dominated social structure that silence women. This is her famous quote from a poem and introduction. I am shiner, I am saint, I am the beloved and the betrayed. I have no joys which are not yours, no ashes which are not yours. I too call myself I. This is an autobiography by Kamala Das. My story is it published in 1976, and it's a biography originally written in Malayalam and later translated into English, and known for its frank confliction style. It shocked conservative society for its candid treatment of female sexuality and identity. Feminist demonstration is a female subjectivity. It offers woman's perspective on love, desire, and selfhood, breaking silence around female experiences. And in this work, he also work on a sexuality and desire. It's boldly address female sexual needs, autonomy, and defining social taboos, and critique of patriarchy. She exposes a gendered oppression in marriage, motherhood, and domestic spaces, and also she searched for identity and reflect her struggle between social expectation and her quest for personal freedom, and self assertion. She acts as a declaration of independence and encouraging women to resist superstition and embrace individuality. Meena Kandaswamy, born in 1984, Tamil Nadu in India, and she no poet, novelist, and activist, and she known for blending literature and social activism, especially regarding caste and gender issues. Her feminist perspective is she's a activist feminism, challenges caste oppression, patriarchy, and systematic injustice, and is uses poetry and prose to amplify marginalized voice and question dominant narratives, and her key work poem Eklavya and One Eyed, and other one The Gypsy Goddess is novel taken by me. Eklavya, it's a poem in her collection by Touch, and it's published in 2013. in the context of inspired by the Mahabharat story of Eklavya, and a lower caste Archer denied training by Dronacharya because of caste. Symbol of a caste oppression, exclusion from knowledge and forced sacrifice. And as we know, Eklavya gives his thumb as a Guru Dakshina. And main theme of this poem is a caste and knowledge. Questions why access to learning and power is denied to marginalized group. Resistance and rebellion is reclaims Eklavya's story as one of defines rather than obedience. And historical injustice is connects ancient caste-based discrimination to contemporary realities to Dalits. And Voice of Subaltern is Kandaswamy rewrites the myth to empower the silenced and marginalized. One-eyed poem is also from his poetry collection Touch, and also published in 2013. And about this poem is One-eyed explores theme of oppression, violence, and marginalization, especially in the context of caste and gender. And Kandaswamy uses stark visceral imagery to depict the physical and psychological trauma endured by the oppressed, and highlighting both the pain and inflicted by systematic injustice and the resilience of those who survive it. The poem reflects a broader style of combining political commentary and with instance personal and collective emotions, making the reader confront the harsh realities of inequality. And the Gypsy Goddess, his famous work published in 2014. Its background of Kilvenmani Meskare, and in Tamil Nadu, where 44 Dalit villagers, mostly women and children and elder, were burned alive by landlords. And it's a counter narrative that challenges biased, incomplete historical records and gives voice to oppressed. And his key themes is caste based trauma is goes beyond physical violence, exposes psychological scare and intergenerational trauma and insidious oppression. And trauma is a spectrum, moves beyond Western PTSD framework and includes the chronic humiliation, social exclusion, and casteist violence. And women as agents of resistance, Dalit women portrayed not only as victims but as a fearless protester. And feminist and political lenses highlighting Dalit women's double oppression, caste plus gender, and portrays their coverage against systematic humiliation and state violence, and challenges patriarchal and upper caste narratives by foregrounding subaltern voices. Conclusion: Kamala Das and Meena Kandaswamy exemplify the power of feminist poetry to critique social norms and amplify marginalized voice, while Das explore personal, emotional, and sexual dimension of female experience, and Kandaswamy emphasizes collective struggle, caste oppression, and political resistance. Together, their works demonstrate that contemporary Indian feminist poetry not only challenges patriarchal structure but also documents historical and ongoing injustices, and asserting women's agency and resilience through literary expression. These are my references. Thank you.
Khushi, my question is to you that how does Kamala Das feminism differ from Meena Kandaswamy's?
Kamala Das, so feminism is a personal and emotional and rooted in individual experience and identity. And Minakanda Swami's feminism is activist and collective, and it's linking gender issues and caste and class struggles.
So, Khushi, my question is, what message do Kamala Das and Meena Kandasamis collectively convey?
They demonstrate that feminism is not that uniform. It evolves from a personal inspection and and so and social transformation. Thank you.
So hello everyone. Today I'll be discussing Meena Kandasami's voice of caste and counter violence. Here is a table of content, and my research question is how Meena Kandasamy employs mythological reinterpretation, feminist Dalit perspective, and poetic expression to challenge caste-based violence and reclaim political agency for marginalized community in poems like One-Eyed and Ek Love You. My hypothesis is how one idea demonstrate literature can challenge oppressive structure, transform symbolism of victimized into resistant, and provide new frames for marginalized voice in modern society. So, Meena Kandasamy was born in 1984. Her writing mostly focus on caste and annihilation, feminism, and resistance. Write in English with a radical, unapologetic voice. She was deeply influenced by Ambedkarite politics and feminist thought. Her works include Touch, which was published in 2006, then Miss Melstacy, and here are some novels, A Small Silence and The Gypsy of Goddess. So, savage treatment of untouchables in One-Eyed. Here are the lines like Dhanam sees her left eye lid open, but lights slipped away. The price for a taste of that touchable water. So here also she mentions that how poor child is hit by her teacher, and the price of the water which she drank, it was caused or caused for her sacrifice. And he intimate object to show pity, like the pot glass and water to see child's need and allow her to quench her thirst. Society shows the cruelty. Upper caste society, the teacher was mentioned there. And the poet's purpose, Meena Kandasamy uses the contrast to condemn the devilish practice of casteism and the savage treatment of untouchables, revealing how even institute like school corrupt and enforces this oppression. So basically, what she's trying to say that education is for progress or growth, and if the same treatment is happening there, then there is no need to think that what in country would be happening. in in a traditional narrative denied and multilated. So here also she tries to say that eclomium is a symbol of marginalized who is not provided uh, education properly, and she and his denial of SS by Dronacharya, then focus on devotion and sacrifice, like how any traditional narrative would try to say that uh, how Eklavya was ગુરુ શિષ્ય પરંપરા ટાઈપ ઓફ થીમ કે ગુરુએ કંઈક એની પાસેથી દક્ષિણા માંગી, મીન્સ કે હા ગુરુ પાસેથી જે કાંઈ દક્ષિણા માંગી એના જ્ઞાનના બદલામાં, so he just cut out his throat. Then the act of disempowerment in Kandaswamy's reimagining Eklavya's defense. You can do a lot of things with your left hand. So she just trying to say that you don't need to cut your thumb, but instead of, if you have given your threat, then no need to think that you are powerless, but you can throw bomb or violently act on this. And here is same mention. Her writing shows the challenge for traditional structures. Then act of resistance can be seen in her work. And Meena Kandaswamy's aesthetic of resistance, I was born with a bomb in my mouth. So we can particularly notice that how she just trying to break down the traditional way of narrating, like why from only elite class of people, because before that there were only upper class literature was provided, but if a country is full of people, then there are many type of story also, and the Dalits or the subaltern are also part of that country. Then why should literature not focus on them instead of only upper class character? Then attacking on cultural and historical icons, which I told that she just tries to reinterpret the myth or old characters from a new point of view or a Dalit type of category. Then rewriting myths and epic in Eklavya, we all know that she just tried to confirm him that you don't need to feel powerless, but instead of you should act with a powerful way. In Sita, Kandaswamy questions that the pathetic condition of woman in Ramayana, depicting Rama as an impassionate husband who neglects Sita's sexual appetite. She portrays Sita's relationship with Ravana as a reaction to Rama's denial, destroying the convention of the passive ideal Indian wife. Continue. In Surpankha, she depicts Surpankha as a neglected woman whose expression of her need for sex resulted into destruction of her femininity by high caste men Rama and Lakshman, creating a disparity where the upper caste woman Sita is more successful in finding pleasure than Dalit woman Surpankha. Challenging religious doctrine, she directly questions the Hindu concept of Advaita, asking if an untouchable Atman and Brahmin Atman could ever be one. In The Gods Wake Up, she described heaven as a boring place filled with snores of millions of gods, attributing their silence toward the cruelties against the Dalits to their perpetual sleep. She reframes the Hindu duties and sacred concepts to expose their complicity or indifference to Dalit suffering. It is for a reference. Then why does we need Dalit literature, or why she just try to write down? This is the case from recent 2 or 3 years. We can connect it with one-eyed also. Here is also matke and pani and all thing. But यहाँ पे मतलब आँख की जगह पे पूरा बच्चा ही गायब हो जाता है. What is required? Then it is a case from August 28th. This is a recent time when a particular school owners kicked Dalit boy in green, uses caste-based rulers and got a FIR case against him. Then in NDTV, August 7, 2024, A Dalit boy, 6-year-old, forced to clean a toilet up school, later found locked in a classroom by elite class people. Then there is some also articles, and in the Hindu, headmaster suspended after Dalit student accused her of forcing them to clean the toilet. This is the same case. And locked up by upper caste woman for entering home. Dalit boy dies by suicide. Here are my references, and it's for further reading. Now you are free to ask question.
So, Bhargav, my question is to you that how has Dalit literature contributed to challenge traditional caste hierarchies?
Yes, so how I just mentioned in a presentation that before that there was a traditional narrative like subaltern or the Dalit peoples are there in a country, but they don't get any voice. But now they are given the voice through the Dalit literature to express themselves. So in a positive way, they are contributing.
So my question is, has there been any progress in the Dalit community after the establishment and growth of Dalit literature?
Yes, there is extensive or highly progress in the document, but still we can see that there is a less chances of progress in the particular society, but it still moves beyond one by one. Thank you.
So, good afternoon to everyone. Today I'm going to deal with the topic from homeland to hostland, diaspora identity, and Rachna Joshi's Leaving India. Here is the table of content. My research question is how do Indian diaspora writer, including Rachna Joshi in Living India, represent displacement, hybridity, and nostalgia in their work to reflect both personal identity, struggle, and border pattern of global migration. And my hypothesis is through work like Rachna Joshi, Living India, Indian diasporic literature portray migration as a transformative experience where displacement create a cultural tension, hybridity become a means of negotiating new identities, and nostalgia function as an emotional anchor to India's civilizational heritage while navigating the challenges of a hostland. So, introduction is that the diasporic literature explore the experience of people who move away from their homeland and negotiated life in cultural context. It deal with a theme of migration, nostalgia, identity, belonging, highlight the tension between roots and routes. Such a writing often reflect a feeling of loss, displacement, and longing, while also portraying resilience, adaptation, and cultural hybridity. Then this is the meaning of diaspora, that what is a diaspora. So diaspora population such as a member of an ethnic or religious group that originated from the same place but dispersed to different location. So one kind of religious people or community that live in one land, but they have to disappear because of the profession or some kind of riots or anything. The word diaspora comes from the ancient Greek diasporian, meaning to sow over. And the concept of diaspora has long been used to refer to the Greek in the Hellenic word, and to the Jews after the fall of Jerusalem in the early 16th century BCE. So basically, it's start from the Hellenic word, and Jews are migrate from Jerusalem, and beginning in the 1950s and 1916, and still it has a wide context in modern time. So here we find the historical wave of diaspora. So in old referred to labor, artisan and trader who experience new land for work money. So here we find the old tradition of trade. So this is the main reason of diaspora. When British come to India, at that time we find that they come for a trade. So it also we can consider as a diaspora or migration. Then in medieval time, British imperialism caused mass movement of artists, labor and soldier. In today's time, the skilled people are migrate from development economy for a better venture, especially from IT, medicine, nano and space technology, engineer, finance and management sector. So now people have a different kind of profession, worldwide trade, globalization. So this is the main reason of today's time diaspora. Then here are some characteristic of diasporic literature. It focus on displacement. It not that kind of displacement that we image, but one shift to from another place because of their choice. And a core thematic exploration is identity, displacement, and the search for belonging. Focus on the complexity of living between two worlds. Then cultural tension, that they have two culture, one from their homeland and one from their hostland. So this is how we find the cultural tension. And a theme of loss, author often engage with the theme of loss and displacement, depicting the emotional toll of leaving one's homeland behind. For further linguistic fluidity, because of the migration or diaspora, they not have a one language, but as they have a two culture, or more than two culture, same way they have also linguistic fluidity in their identity and hybridity and creolization. As we find the Homi ke Baba is a concept of hybridity, or Salman Rushdie mentioned in their work. So it is the hybridity and challenging narratives. Because of their two identity or two cultural impact, or more than one language influence, their narrative change from their perspective. And memory and nuance, it offer a rich and nuanced portrait by drawing on a personal and collective memories and illuminating the impact of migration on family and community. So because of the migration, they have the effect their memory and nuance and also ideology. Then applying the framework to Living India, as we know that Rachna Joshi's poem Living India is also a part of a diasporic writing. So why this poem show as a diasporic poem? So displacement and migration, through this line, why did I leave India and come to North America? So here we clearly find that she shift from India to North America. So it shows the displacement and migration. Then cultural hybridity and identity negotiation. So her line is, this really seems brave new naked world. So here she mentioned the world. She not view from the perspective of African or Indian, but she globalized the identity and negotiate one identity with other. Then contrast of homeland and hostland. So she clearly mentioned that North America was a clean, sanitized, almost a sterile, no ruins, no myth, no ghost. So this is his perception about hostland, North America. For homeland, she writes that India is a stark, ancient and ugly, magnificent, afflicting or degrading. So also here she take his point of view about India. then nostalgia and connection to history. So major concern of diaspora literature is nostalgia. Because one or another way they they recall their native place or homeland. So 5,000 years of continuous civilization lie in a wait like a doting grandparent. So diaspora literature in Indian English language. So Rachna Joshi is not only one writer who talk about diaspora, but there are a list of many writers who talk about diaspora and also mention in their works. So first and famous is the Salman Rushdie, a prominent writer of Indian English literature. In Midnight Children and Imaginary Homeland, these two are his work. And in Midnight Children, we find he talk about hybridity, one then more cultural, that he write from another country, but he mentioned the magic realism, all of these things from India. Then V.S. Naipaul, a profound knowledge of diasporic agony and search for roots are conveyed in his fiction. So his novels like Way in the World and A House for Mr. Biswas, two are a major diasporian work. Then the Jhumpa Lahiri, a second generation diasporic writer, portrays character caught in the tension between their Indian and American identity as they seek equilibrium. So his famous novel, The Namesake, is the most known example of diasporic literature. Another are Bharti Mukherjee, a notable diasporic author whose novel have been analyzed for her style and syntax. His novel like Jasmine, The Tiger's Daughter, it shows the diasporic content in her work. Then Chitra Banerjee Devkaruni, she follows the themes of identity, cultural dislocation and search for belonging. So these are characters we find in her work Arranged Marriage. Then Kiran Desai, conflict of migration, globalization, and cultural displacement through a character. And has her famous novel is The Inheritance of Loss. In it, she mentioned diasporic element like migration or nostalgia, displacement, all those things. Then also we find that diaspora is a global global concept. So also we find cinematic representation of diaspora in Bollywood. So the film industry is an active agent in identity creation and the Indian diaspora. Imagination of India is strongly informed by Bollywood movie. So as we know that in India we find the major Bollywood movies that follow the diasporic concept. One is Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, a 1998 film portrayed diasporic identity through the negotiation of modern romance and family value within a globalized and Western setting. So it mixes the both identity, Indian and foreigner. Then Namaste London, 2007 film, highlight the cultural clash and reconciliation between Indian tradition and Western lifestyle in the life of second generation immigration. Then My Name is Khan, 2010 film, examine diasporic struggle with racism, religion, and belonging in post 9/11 American while affirming Indian identity abroad. So this how this movie also based on Indian culture, but also reflect their point of view about another country or another culture. So here is a conclusion that Rachna Joshi's Leaving India reflect the essence of diasporic literature, migration, nostalgia, and identity struggle between homeland and hostland, like a work of Salman Rushdie, Jhumpa Lahiri, V.S. Naipaul, and Bharti Mukherjee. It shows how diasporic voice bridge past and present, carrying culture memory wise negotiating new reality. Final quote or a concluding thought is, here you are to foraging for home, to foraging for here, never enough for a both. So this quotation from a diaspora blue by Joma Umebnyo, it says that we have a both perspective, not completely from homeland or not completely from hostland. Here is my references, and now you are free to ask question.
So my question is, can diasporic literature be considered a bridge between cultures, or does it create a separate identity of its own?
Of course, the diasporic literature be considered as a bridge, because as I mentioned in last quote, that there is a no perspective from a homeland or hostland. It is a mixing of two culture. So we have to consider as a bridge between two culture, not as a separate ideology or a separate identity.
So Krishna, my question is, is diasporic literature more about loss and nostalgia, or about opportunity and hybridity?
So it would be both, as a lost and nostalgia and opportunity and hybridity. So writer like Rachna Joshi and Jhumpa Lahiri are talk about loss and nostalgia, and writer like Salman Rushdie, he talk about opportunities and hybridity. But according to me, it should be opportunity and hybridity, because when we think about nostalgia or personal point of view, it could be orthodox thought. So we have to think it broadly as a as a opportunity and hybridity. This is from my side. Thank you, everyone.
So today's my topic of presentation is Living India and Donkey, exploring Indian and global migrant experiences. So human migration is one of the significant issue in today's time. Millions of people do migration, but why they do migration, and what are the consequences out of them? So through this poem and the movie Donkey, I will explore this. So my personal information, table of contents. Then my research question is, how do Rachna Joshi's poem Living India and the film Donkey portray the experience of modern Indian migrant and migrant worldwide, particularly in terms of identity, nostalgia, and societal pressures and political challenges? And hypothesis is Living India and Donkey illustrate how modern Indian migrants, as well as migrant around the world, navigate struggles with personal identity, lodging for their homeland, societal expectations, and political or legal barriers, revealing the emotional, social, and structural challenges of migration in both local and global context. So migration is more than crossing a border. It is about identity, nostalgia, and struggle people face while seeking a better life. So literature and cinema often captures this experience in powerful way. So in this presentation, where I have explained that about Rachna Joshi's poem Living India, and how Rajkumar Hirani's film Donkey have explained this. So the word donkey comes from the Punjabi word donkey root.
it's referring to a dangerous and illegal paths migrants take to reach countries like the US or UK. Through this, this shows that how migrants deal with personal identity, homesickness, societal pressure, and political or legal barriers. So, first of all, I'll talk about migration in literature. So, literature is a tool which reflects the emotional, social, and psychological dimension of migration. Migrant experiences in text which captures hope, loss, belongingness, then identity, negotiation. It provides a lens to understand how migration shapes individual and society over time. So it bridges the gap between personal stories and larger societal trend, and which sets the stage for analysis of cinema also. Some of the example here is Living India by Rachna Joshi, then Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. Movie also have been on this text. Then The Inheritance of Loss by Kiran Desai. So such a literature often explores themes of loss, nostalgia, cultural hybridity, and search for identity, while simultaneously they challenges fixed notion of belongingness, nationhood, and cultural authenticity. So it becomes both record of displacement and a tool for reimagining the identity across the border. So in cinema, migration, cinema visualizes the migrant journey, portraying both physical movement and emotional displacement. Through this, we see the nostalgia, cultural conflict, identity struggle in ways that resonate with audiences. So works like Donkey movie explore the contemporary Indian migrant experiences, linking personal stories to larger migration pattern. And such a film, this film serves as a poignant reminder of how the underdeveloped world like India and African people, this all due to their economic and cultural inequality, they driven to survive in the developed world, and even if it is by illegal means. So this movie, Rajkumar Hirani's movie film Donkey depicts a story of this group of friends from the Punjab who set out in a perilous journey to immigrate to United Kingdom via clandestine route, which called Donkey Flight. Then, if we see the Rachna Joshi's Living India through the context of migration, so she also have a nostalgia for it. So nostalgia for Indian history, myths, and cultural heritage. Through this poem's line, we find this. But she also finds the contrast between Indian country India and the North America, that how it was clean and sanitized, better atmosphere than India. Then identity shaped by cultural memory, tradition, and connection to a place. Like in India, all meaning comes from a sacramental link with past. Then insight into belongingness, displacement, and migrant experience. Poem's line also depicts this. Then film Donkey, a narrative overview, if we see. So as I mentioned earlier, directed by Rajkumar Hirani, tells the story of group of friends from Punjab. They migrated to United Kingdom through Donkey route. So in this also, this dialogues tales of why they migrated from India to this United Kingdom. So it's obviously economical pressure. This dialogue broader keeps out only the poorer, means they are not able to legally go to the another country. Contrast with harsh reality, like legal migration with dreams of waste. We were born to poor, but we don't won't die poor. Their ambition towards the better life. Then their belongingness shaped by societal pressure. Then it also highlights the cultural and economic dependency on waste. So cinema, society, and migration reflective reality through donkey. As earlier talk, through illegal thing, they have migrated for the better life, and which reflect the real societal issues also on in modern Indian migration. Then it also this film connects with emotional and experiences like homesick, hopes, societal pressure. Then we also find social ontology in the film, how societal norms and cultural value collective experiences shape audience perception. Then standard effect. Then cinema act as a mirror to society, which able to let a society know the issue of in society. So here how brain drain happens. Though in the poem Rachna Joshi, it is for their better education facilities, or better education future, we find in that poem. But through this movie we find that unskilled Indians risk legal migration, how semi-skilled Indians also risk to this migration, and how systematic barriers affect this, and search for survival and their dreams they migrate. So the brain drain from developing country, their main cause is lack of employment opportunity, lower wages, poor working condition, political instability. All these things leads to human migration, and ultimately loss of skill manpower, negative impact on socio-economic development, and widening inequality between developed and developing country. So our skill human being migrated into a developed country. So this how we also lost in human agency. Then remedy suggested is better domestic opportunity, which we hope to develop in our country. Higher salary, improve working condition, policies to retain skilled youth, all these are necessary. Political and legal challenges of irregular migration, if we see that unfair visa rules, like rich people can easily get where some of are excluded from them, and they label as a illegal, like in donkey also we find. So it is created by biased laws, never gave them a fair chance to migrate. Discrimination also we find in visa process. Then restrictive laws like UK's illegal migration. Then invisible and exploitation ultimately happens with the person who migrates. If we see here the identity, gender, and migrant journey, how the widening gap is here, like in comparison with men and female. So this is from International Organization of Migration report 2014. So it also shows that male to female plight in past 20 years, it was 50.6 to 49.4 percentage, but then it was 51.9 to 48.1 percentage. So the share of female migrants has been decreased since 2000. So it also shows the wide gap in this. So according to this India Today article of 2024, so it records that 96,917 Indians illegally immigrants were apprehended or expelled in 2023 while attempting to United Kingdom through donkey routes. So there is also role of organization in this migration, how they include and exclude the person. They decide who can get entry, or who can stay, who can work. So government, school, NGOs, and all this works for them, and how they influence migration, their decision for including or excluding, and favor and unfavor things is there. So In conclusion, I can say that in the poem Rachna Joshi, Living India also depicts the lodging for country and some contrast with urban developed countries. And film Donkey also portrays the experience of modern Indian as well as the worldwide migrants problem. And they also reveal the political and legal challenges which migrants face, including immigration policies and structural barriers. Together, the poem and film underscore this migration is not just a physical movement but an emotional and social journey where nostalgia, resilience, and the quest for belonging shape the lives of Indian immigrants. So, this narrative reminds us of a human dimension of migration, bridging cultural understanding between home and abroad. So these are my references. Thank you so much. Now questions are welcome.
So Trupti, can you give me some more examples from books or movies that portray the experience of migrants?
Yes, as I also earlier mentioned, from the work Namesake also there is a movie Namesake which also somehow talks of this, and another is Madras Cafe movie which also talks about this issue.
So, Trupti, my question is, how do global migration trends reflect economic disparities between countries?
So as mentioned earlier that what is the main root cause of human migration, particularly for better life. So from poor country to developing or developed country, human migration happens for the better life, for better economic condition, better healthcare. All these things leads to human migration. So ultimately it shows the disparity between the two world. Generally from India, South Asian countries, India's and African do migration to Gulf countries also. So this was from my side. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, myself Dhruvika Gohel. Today I will be presenting on my topic is post-colonial in Midnight Children's, a critic of power and politics. These are my personal information. These are table of content. This is my research question. How does Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children use magical realism and allegory to critique post-colonial power structures and the political instability of independent India? And the hypothesis is Midnight Children's Rushdie employs magical realism and the allegorical lives the Midnight Children's to reveal how post-colonial politics, leaders, nationalism, suppressed dissent, and perpetuate corruptions, demonstrating that India's independence and inherited the structures and social instabilities of colonial rule. These are about author. Salman Rushdie is a British Indian novelist known for blending magical realism with history and politics. Born in Mumbai and educated in England, his work explored identity, migration, and post-colonial issues. Midnight's Children, 1991, his most famous novel uses magical realism to depict Indian history, winning the Booker Prize and critical acclaim. Introduction. Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children is landmark post-colonial novel set against India's independence in 1947 and the partition with Pakistan narrated by Salim Sinai. Born at the exact moment of independence, the story symbolized the national itself with hopes, struggles, and burdens. Through Salim's life, Rushdie connects personal and national histories, exploring theme of identity, memory, power, and nationalhood. By blending magical realism with historical events, the novel reflects the fragmented and constant nature of post-colonial identity, exposing how history is shaped by both personal experience and political ambition. Post-colonial framework. Post-colonial literature critiques the lingering impact of colonialism on cultural, politics, and identity. It explores how colonial rule left nations with deep division and individuals with identity crisis, torn between inherited colonial values and narrative traditions. Themes such as hybridity, the mixing of language, cultures, and identities, and resistance against domination are central to this body of writing. In Midnight Children, Salman Rushdie reflects this concern by portraying India's difficult transition from colonial rule to independence. Salim Sinai fragmented identity symbolized the fractured nation, while the fate of the Midnight Children mirror the struggles of post-colonial India's to unity of out of diversity. Rushdie also critiques how post-independence politics often repeated colonial patterns of power, inequality, and repression, showing that freedom both hope and disillusionment. Next is the critic of power. In Midnight Children, Salman Rushdie critiques how post-colonial Indian leaders often nationalism for personal gain, showing independence not as an end but the start of new corruption and control. Historical figures like Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi exemplify these. Nehru embodies early optimism yet struggle to escape colonial legacies, and while Indira Gandhi's emergency marks a period of repression where civil liberties were curtailed and dissent silenced. Using allegory and magical realism, Rushdie illustrates the erosion of democratic ideals. The disbanding of Midnight Children and the loss of their power symbolize the suppression of freedom, diversity, and unity under political tyranny. Critic of politics. In Midnight Children, Salman Rushdie critics of politic manipulation in post-colonial India. The partition of 1947 is depicted as a result of power-driven decision leading to communal violence and mass displacement. The Midnight Children themselves symbolize India's fractured unity with their diverse background and reflecting the nation's varied religion and culturals and their disbanding mirroring the awakening of collective identity. Rushdie also highlights the authoritarianism through the emergency when civil liberties were suspended and dissent was silenced. Using magical realism, he shows how the suppression of individual freedoms reflect larger political repression, revealing how the democratic ideals of independence were undermined by those in power. Role of magic realism. In Midnight Children's, Salman Rushdie employs magical realism to blend history and fantasy, allowing him to critique political authority and explore the complexity of post-colonial Indian in a symbolic and imaginative way. The supernatural powers of the Midnight Children's represent the diversity, richness, and potential of the newly independent nations, with each child reflecting different region of cultural and communities. As the story progresses, the gradual loss of their power serves as an allegory for the suppression of democracy and individual freedoms under authoritarian rule, particularly during the emergency, illustrating how corruption, political centralization, and the abuse of power gradually erode the unity, vitality, and promise of the nations. Themes of identity and nationalhood. Identity in Midnight Children, Salim Sinai's life explores the theme of identity with his body and experience, serving as a metaphor for fragmented India, struggling with cultural hybridity, multiple language, religious, and heritage. Salim's personal conflict reflect the challenges of belonging is a diverse society, showing how individual identity is shaped by historical and social forces. Nationalhood, the theme of nationalhood in Midnight Children is portrayed through Salim's life, mirroring India's political history. Event like partition, political corruption, and the emergency parallel his personal triumphs and losses, making his story an allegory for the nation's journey and illustrating how the struggles, diversity, and fragmentation of India shape both collective and personal experience. Conclusion. In Midnight Children, Salman Rushdie uses a post-colonial narrative to expose the flaws of political system, critiquing power, corruption, and authoritarianism, especially through events like emergency. The novel shows how leaders exploit nationalism, suppress dissent, and centralize authority, undermine the promises of independence. Through allegory and magic realism, Rushdie also emphasizes that post-colonial nationalism, inherent colonial violence, and political instability, illustrating how the struggle of individuals mirror the broader struggles of the nations. These are my references. Thank you. Now you feel free to ask a question.
So, Dhruvika, my question is, how does Rushdie portray memory and history in the novel?
Memory in Midnight Children is fragmented, showing how history based and rewritten by those in power. Next question.
So, Dhruvika, how does Salman Rushdie use Salim Sinai as a symbol of post-colonial India?
Yes, Salim Sinai embodies post-colonial India. His fragmented identity mirrors the national chaos, diversity, and struggles after independence. Thank you. That is from my side.
Then how does this research question? How does the Salman Rushdie Midnight Children employ the historical metafiction, integrate the relationship between the narrative, memory, history in the post-colonial Indian context? Hypothesis. Rushdie Midnight Children demonstrate that the history is the never fixed object truth constructed by the narrative shaped by the memory, imagination, and the ideology. Through the metafictional stages, unreliable narrators, magic realism, and the certification of the history, Rushdie not only resistant the colonial and uh, nationalist master narrative, but also regiment and the nation as the plural hybridity and the fragmented uh, entity. Historiographic metafiction is the conceptual framework. First, this word used by the term introduced by the Linda Woodson in the is the poetic postmodernism. His work in the 1988 is to define the fiction in the history is a narrative construction, not objective truth. The combination self-reflexivity with the historical representation. The question that the authority and the official historiographic and the truth claims reclaim the marginalized voiced and suppress the past, show that the remembering and the narrative history are the always act on the interpretation. In the Linda's, the Woodson is the give a perspective how this only simple history described, but is the metafictional describing is the someone is the difference. Scholarly frameworks. Linda Woodson is the historiographic metafiction, blend history and the fiction, and the hidden white narrative shape how the understanding historical events is the also historical events is the not only events but connectivity with the history and the present contexts. Post-colonial theory focus on the memory, hybridity, and the marginalized voices. Rushdie narrative show history as the constructor in the interpreted, not fixed. In the frameworks help the critically read the memory, magic realism, and the narrative of experimentation. These are the argument by the Linda Woodson through the connective in the Midnight Children's. History as a story, fusion of the national and personal, and Salim Sinai in birth in the Midnight Children uh, of independence, fuse the personal life with the national and density in the born of the Salim Sinai in the midnight in the 1947 is the whole of the history described in the Salman Rushdie's novel. How is the colonial through the in the 1950 to 1977 is the quote of Rushdie's cloak hand in the join the flame in the perpetual greeting as I come. Oh, split it out at the precise instant of the Indian arrival in the independence. It's a tumble forth into the world. Is the autobiographical mirrors India is the trajectory, persistent war and emergency. Is the national history is the reflected through the private memory and the trauma. Is alleging that the speculative of the collective history versus individual history. In the Salim Sinai is the described through this familiar context and the Indian history, how this independence times and 1950 to 1977, although is the past in 1950 to 1947 through is the post-colonial and is the grandparents time in the is the 1940 is born and the 1940 to 1971 is the like Nehru's partition time and the 1971 to 1977 is the Indira Gandhi's is the suggestion history is the lived embodied and the emotion is not just future in the nation narrative in the inseparable from the subjective lives. Unreliable narrator deconstruct the historical authorities. Salim confused the error deconstructor in the foreignness, decentralized narrative and reliability. Like sometimes was the confused to describe his the memory and his life stories. And to to confuse, to give an audience. Is remarkably Gandhi's death is the understanding his mystical discrepancy. His self-reflexivity forces readers to see history as a deconstructed performances. This narrative fability, mirror fability is the official status of the histories. Rushdie critiques the illustrate of the objective historical truth through the Salim's unreliable voices. Memory is the counter issue to the official history. In the Salim Sinai's memory throughout this novel in three parts, how describe the Indian condition through his the familiar context. So is the confusing and the counter argue gives the what is the true histories. In Salim's narrative, privileges personal memory and the official recorded, questioning the authority of the objective history is the famous is the quotes by the Salman Rushdie. Memory truth the become the memory has its own. Specially kind is the selective, unlimited, altered, extracted, minimized, glorified, and the vilified also. But in the end of the creates into own reality. No sense human belonging ever the status of the someone else. Various more than his own. Memory is subjectly at a coherent frame in the alternative issue of the Indian past. Personal recalling the shape, historical event, infusing them with the emotional trauma and imagination. Rushdie decommodation that the history is the constructed and the individual memory can constitute complicated or the official history. Magical realism as the alternative historiographies in the blend faith fantasy with the historical events like a Salim's school at the birth and the personal life mirror in the national history lacking the individual and collective experience. Non-linear timelines and capture the shoes the post-colonial India. Surely imagine the events, the currently emotion and the symbolic truth. Challenge the official history to creating the narrative drives to alternative issues. Certification of the history, autobiographical parts. In the Salim's life mirror the Indian history, his the birth combined with the independence lacking the present in national religious time. Blend is the historical event with the myth, folklore in the partition, riots, and the Salim's telepathy among his midnight children. Is the a historical event, partition and rotation is the describe the Salim's telepathy is the directly uh, playful in the ironic nation, humor, especially worldly, and suggestion highlight the choose on the historical events. And cultural and ideological drive makes the Hindi, Urdu, and English reflection Indian hybridity in identity. Is Salman Rushdie writing the first person who is mainly famous to the certification of the languages in English literature. The emergency as the allegory in the authoritarian power. In the emergency by the represent the Indian Indira Gandhi's emergency in 1975 to 1977 is through the political and social chaos in the novel. The Salim's family and city life reflect the loss of freedom and survivals. Fourth struggle and the curfew dramatize and the authority control and the personal tragedy the mirror national oppression and the political perception highlight the fragility in the democracy in the individual right in the post-colonial India. In the Salim's family, also the controlling power of the Indira Gandhi's timelines. Salim's body as the national allegory and the fragmentation. Salim Sinai is born in the August in the 1947 is the exact timeline in the Indian independence, describing throughout the Salman Rushdie in the independence context throughout the novel is the Salim body is the actually timeline with the independence. Body symbolizes the fragmentation of the political identity, injuring and the illness parallel the national crisis like a partition and emergency. The sometime is the illness of the his body of Salim's. He also presenting the how the condition of the India in the partition time and emergency of the Indira Gandhi's. personal suffering mirror and the collective trauma of the country. Salim's embodying the multiplicity, stability, and the constant history of India. Meta-fictional self-reflexivity. In the Salim Sinai is the narrator throughout this novel is the also meta-fictional contextuality is the presenting or self story in is an oven. Highlight the fictional narrative of the highlight the why telling historical events, blur line between the author and narrative historical reality, encouraging reading to the question true and narrative authority, deconstructing Rushdie, awareness in literary form and techniques, a multiplicity versus historical insingularity. History is the appendix through the any personal perspectives. In Salman Rushdie give a voice of the Salim Sinai in the multiple aspect, no only single. Traditional history is present line night in the single truth. Salim story integrate multiple voices and experiences. Show that the national history is the shaping by the individual memory. Highlight the India diversity, contradiction, and the subjectivity of truth. In conclusion, historiographic metafiction in the Midnight Children foregrounds and the interplay between the personal memory and the historical events, reliving the history and the subjective and the narrative constructed. Rushdie is the established in the historical silent, showing the how identity, nationhood, and the memory rewriting in the multiplicity of the perspective. Unreliability novel highlight that history is not a fixed truth but is the negotiated, imaginative, and the self-reflexivity in narratives. These are the references. Thank you. And feel free to ask any question.
Parthiv, how does Midnight Children use historiography metafiction to question official history?
Yes, Salman Rushdie used in this Salim Sinai's character through the non-narratives in the past and memories. All these things are the not challenges to the original history in the is the original life and connecting with the Indian politics duration this time period. Both are the connectively each other. These are the readers to read this Midnight Children. And that time is the question: what is the original history and what is the Salman Rushdie's perspective on history? That are the main questioning throughout the metafictional history in the main histories.
Arthi, my question is, how do Salim's narration, memory, and magic realism reflect Hutchion's ideas of historiographic metafiction?
In this idea, added the many concept through the non-linear narration in the is the story given by the Salim Sinai only one perspective is the like a term of the selective storytelling. These are the main would sense main argument through the how multiplicity in the history and metafiction are truly connection. Okay, thank you.
Jyotirmay. Today's I am dealing with my presentation topic is narrating the nation Midnight's Children as a postmodern epic. This is my personal information, table of contents, research questions. How does the blending of personal memory, myth, and history redefine the relationship between the individual and the nation? And a hypothesis, literature can challenge
and revise official historiography, offering a more pluralistic vision of the nation than state sanction history. And introduction: Midnight's Children in 1981 by Salman Rushdie, who was winner of Booker Prize 1981 and second Booker Prize in 1993 and 1993 and Booker of Bookers and Best of the Bookers in 2008, landmark in post-colonial and post-modern literature, blends personal history with national history in India's independence and partition. Shows the nations as narrative history, history told through memory, myth, and storytelling. And what is the postmodern epic? Epic traditions tells the grand story of a nation or people. Example: Mahabharata and Iliad focuses on heroes' origins, destiny, and collective identity. Postmodern epic rejects linear history, prefers fragmentation, digression, plurality, reflexive and ironic questions its own storytelling, mixes myth, memory, folklore, history, and popular cultures, challenges official grand narratives, showing history as contested and unstable. The nation as narrative. Nationhood is not fixed. It is constructed through stories, myths, and collective memories. Salim Sinai's life symbolizes the history of modern India. His birth, his independence ties his fate to the nations. His body constantly cracking and fragmenting becomes a metaphor for the divided and fragile Indian nation. The novel shows how the personal, political, and national are inseparably linked. And postmodern narrative techniques, magic realism, everyday events are infused with the fantastic. Example: children's with supernatural powers, blurring the line between fact and fantasy. Non-linear storytelling, the narrative jumps back and forth, full of digressions and interruptions, reflecting the fragmented natures of memory and history. And unreliable narrator. Salim admits confusion, forgets details, and even contradicts himself, making readers question the truth of the story. Intertextuality, the novel draws on myth, folklore, Bollywood cinema, political events, and history, creating a rich cultural tapestry. And Midnight's Children as a epic, large cast of characters resembles the vast range of heroes and figures in classical epics, each representing different aspects of society and history. Grand historical sweep in 1947 to 1977 converts 3 decades of India's journey from independence, partition to the emergency, themes of destiny and prophecy. Salim's birth at midnight symbolizes the fate of the nation. His powers connect him to others. Midnight's Children, use of myth and oral traditions, blends Indian folklore, legends, and storytelling techniques, giving the novel the scale and textures of an epic. Postmodern features in the epic, irony and parody is used in the novel. The novel mocks official versions of history, exposing the gap between political myth and lived reality, hybrid language. Rushdie mixes English with Hindustani slang and regional idioms, reflecting India's linguistic diversity, multiplicity of voices. Instead of single heroic voice, the narrative becomes polyphonic, including many perspectives and tones. Decentering the hero, Salim is not a flawless epic hero, but flawed, fragmented, and often comic figures, embodying the contradictions of the nation. Narrating the nation, national identity is unstable and contested. The novel shows India's not as a single unified world, as a fragmented, diverse, and often in conflict. And historical events, partition, linguistic riots, wars, and the emergency reflects the political and social fractures of the nation. History from below. Instead of leaders and rulers, the story foregrounds the experiences of ordinary people like Salim and his family, challenges official historiography by mixing memory, myth, and personal perspective. Rushdie's questions official versions of Indian history. Critical receptions, widely celebrated, held as a post-colonial masterpiece that redefined Indian English fiction. Rewriting history, praised for presenting India's past through subaltern perspective, giving voice to ordinary people rather than official rulers, and criticism. Some historians and readers accused Rushdie of distorting facts and trivializing serious political events through fantasy and parody. Lasting impact. Despite debates, the novel is still considered a postmodern national epic, blending history, myth, and memory to narrative the nation. In conclusion, Midnight's Children is a postmodern epic that tells the story of India through literature. It blends myth, history, and personal memory, creating a rich and a layered narrative. The novel reimagines the nation as a narrative, showing that national identity is fluid, contested, and constructed through stories, demonstrates how literature can write the nation, giving voice to multiple perspectives and reshaping historical memories. And this is my references. And thank you. Now your friend ask me a question.
My question is, how does Midnight Children give a voice to the subaltern?
In the novel Midnight's Children, the gives of the subaltern by focusing on the ordinary people's marginalized groups. They are just political leaders democratize and the tales of the history. Next.
Why is Midnight Children's often called both a post-colonial and postmodern novels?
In the novel, the postmodern and postcolonial in because it deals with India's colonial and the independence while using the technique of fragmentation, irony, and uh, and the metafiction. Thank you. From this is my. Hello everyone, myself KHUSHI Goswami. My today's presentation topic is 19th century narrative technique in Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie and a fine balance by Rohinton Mistro. So this is based on Lisa Moody's article. So in the article she argues both writer Salman Rushdie and Rohinton Mistro borrowed the 19th century storytelling technique of Sir Walter Scott, who is a father of historical fiction. So they take both same technique but use it in different way. So here my aim is how these both writer take these technique of old 19th century, but it fit in the India's history and powerful and meaningful way. So without wasting much time, let's discuss. These are my academic details and presentation details, and these are the topic which I am going to discuss in this presentation. My research question is, how do Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children and Rohinton Mysteries fine balance, inherit, adapt, or subvert 19th century narrative techniques, particularly those of Sir Walter Scott, in order to narrate India's 20th century history? My hypothesis is Rushdie and Mystery both adapt 19th century narrative convention derived from Sir Walter Scott, but they do so in divert way. Rushdie uses allegory, magical realism, and fragmented narrator to destabilize history and highlights its subjectivity. So while Mystery employs realist, omniscient melodrama and collective microscope to evoke empathy and emphasize survival. So despite their differences, both function as witnessing narratives, so that bears more responsibility for presentive contrast memories of modern India. So here the aim is bringing this article Lisa Moody's. So it provide bridge between 19th century historical fiction and the novel in dialogue with Sir Walter Scott. So it analyze similarity and divergence in technique. So as I mentioned, Lisa Moody's aim is to show Rushdie and Mystery's inherent, adapt, or subvert 19th century narrative convention. Here is the core comparison of the both work. So we all know Salman Rushdie, but Rohinton Mistro is a Indian-born Canadian writer. He wrote this novel, A Fine Balance, on the case of on the base of independence and the emergency, as Salman Rushdie wrote. So the timeline of Midnight Children is 1947 to 1981, independence and partition and the war, all these things. And the timeline of Fine Balance is primarily the emergency and focus on apart microsome. So the style and narrative technique in Rushdie uses magical realism, fragmented, and Mystery uses realism, omniscient narrator, and multiple protagonists. Central argument. So Lisa Moody argues that both Rushdie and Mystery borrowed heavily from the Victorian novel tradition, but they do so for different purpose. So Rushdie takes techniques like coincidence, omniscient narration, and panoramic scope. So and he turns them into playful self-aware. So here Mystery employs the same tradition in a realistic, like a Dickensian manner. So using coincidence and melodrama to generate pathos and moral outrage. So here she insists that these choices are not merely stylistic but political. They shape how the novel represent India's independence, partition, and emergency. Here Scott's legacy and theoretical framework. So in the model of Walter Scott, he uses three major types. So first is universal passion across time, and the history filtered through the interruption and protagonist who meditate between camps. And the second one is historicity, in which subjective interruption. Then the third one is meditating prototype protagonist. So here, Lucas critic highlighted the historicity of fiction fiction, and while Collingwood argued all history is interruptive. So these idea provide a bridge between Scott and Rushdie. So these argument also mentioned in the article by Moody. Post-colonial critic context here Lisa Moody uses. So she shades Scott against post-colonial debates. Like a critic like Frederick Jameson sees third world text as a national allegory. So it means every story reflects the nation's struggle. So Ijaz Ahmad critiques his idea these as too sweeping, arguing for specificity. And the Linda Hussein instead highlight the idea of witnessing narrative, where he fiction testifying to trauma and racist official and so instead emphasizing witness literature as testimony of trauma. So here Lisa Moody spaces Rushdie and mystery within this debate, allegory, critique and witnessing. So defining 19th century narrative technique. 19th century narrative technique in English novel had certain hallmarks, like a panoramic scope covering a wide social canvas, then serial form allowing for episodic storytelling, melodrama, and all those things. So Dickens is a prime example of these 19th century storytelling, and his coincidence and appeals to readers' sympathy helped shape Victorian culture. So here, Lisa Moody argues that we can see echoes of this tradition in Rushdie and Mystery. They both uses melodrama and coincidence, but they adapt these devices to India's 20th century context. Here, Rushdie's Midnight Children, according to Lisa Moody, Rushdie dramatized coincidence as allegory. So we all know as Salim Sinai was born exactly the time of independence of India, and Salim constantly interrupts himself and also feels a reader as an unreliable narrator. So like I tell here I put one example from it. I tell myself I must stick to facts, but facts refuse to stick to me. So this way they feels reader unreliable narrator. So this self-doubt mirror Scott's insists that history is subjective. And then Rushdie's narrative crisis. So emergency as a rapture in this novel, and also as I mentioned, Salim is fragmented, and his son Adam was mute, means he has no voice, voiceless. So it symbolized silence, voices, and historical trauma. So here Rushdie dramatized Collingwood's point. History is interpretations, but authorization regime seeks to erase interruption altogether. So the emergency forces the narrative itself to break down and embodying trauma, not just the context, but it inform. Then Rohinton Mistri's novel, A Fine Balance. It is a omniscient and realistic narration. So Mistri's approach is very different. He uses compassion and omniscient narration, giving readers a sober and trustworthy account. So here a character of Dina's apartment become a microcosm. So of India's it becomes a Microsoft of India under the emergency, where four central characters like Dina, Ishwar, Om, and Manik from a fragile community. So around them, prebable figures like Mrs. Gupta is from a pro-emergency business interest, and the Thakur Dharmashi is a local corruption. Is a symbolized in the novel as a local corruption. So embodies systematically force. So the novel foreground survival characters are constantly forced to compromise ethically in order to stay alive. Mystery's narrative technique. So he uses melodrama to generate empathy, not irony. So when Ishwaran and Om are forcibly sterilized, the narrator describes it in the raw, direct detail. So through they were dragged into the dark room, struggling, pleading for mercy. So unlike Rushdie, who destabilized narrative authority, Mystery builds reader trust and channels outrage. So his technique and recalls Dickens' moralizing tone, but here it is shaped by political realities of India's in the 1970s. Comparative analysis of the both novel by Lisa Moody. So here the narration, like unreliable was omniscient. So in the terms of narration, Rushdie's playful self-down, and while Mystery is sober and steady and trustworthy. So in the case of tone, ironic was compassion, like Rushdie blends comedy and tragedy, and while case of Mystery remains firmly tragic and compassion. So in the case of coincidence, Rushdie uses mythical allegory, and in the case of Mystery uses a realistic manner of India. And in the case of ethics, destabilization was empathy. So Rushdie destabilized the idea of truth itself, and Mystery emphasizes moral clarity and empathy. A comparative synthesis of Modi both acts as witnessing narratives, and both inheritors quotes concern with moral history, but in different way. So here Rushdie embraces allegory plus magic realism, and the Mystery insists realism plus collective microsm. Here I put my point of view according to these articles. So we should ask whether Moody's Scottian frame is sufficient. So Rushdie's metafiction and magical realism, many access Scott's category, align more with postmodern strategy. So in the case of Mystery's realism, certainly recalls Dickens, but it also develops a uniquely South Asian realism. So it shapes the caste, poverty, and political repression. So by questioning Moody's these framework, we acknowledge her article's value while also finding its limits. And this critical engagement is crucial at our PG level of this study. In the conclusion, 19th century techniques clarity perished in contemporary Indian fiction. Rushdie and Mystery adapts Scott's legacy to narrate India's post-independence crisis. So both novels demonstrate that fiction is not just art, but is a form of urgent historical testimony. And they remind us that literature has that power to preserve constant memories and challenges official silence. These are my references, and thank you. If you guys have any question, feel free to ask. KHUSHI, my question is, does Scott's framework fully explain these novels? Not entirely, but Scott's Walter Scott's model help us to illuminate the uses of coincidence by Rushdie, and the uses Mystery, specifically realism of India. So this way it is not a fully follow the Scott's model.
My question is, how does Rushdie and Mystery differ in their treatment of the coincidence?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, both the uses coincidence, but Rushdie, Salman Rushdie uses it with the allegory, like Salim Sinai born at the moment of India's independence. So the same way Rohinton Mystery uses it like such a is a in the novels Taylor's sterilization and subsequent downfall. So these both are different in treatment of coincidence. Thank you. This is from my side.
Now,